supporting. So please put your questions in the chat as you have them. And as Jing mentioned, we are recording this, so it'll be available to you later. I'll keep that in mind. Great. So we'll get started with a short presentation first, and then we'll dive into some step-by-step tutorial, kind of workshop style, on using this QGIS software. Hopefully, some people already have the software installed, but we'll go through some steps if people need to do that. We'll walk you through that, and that way everybody or most people will be able to follow along step by step on your own screens. Sometimes it is challenging in these workshops with you're looking at the Teams video share and your own software, so you'll have to figure out a way to kind of juggle those. And yeah, if you're not able to install or follow along, that's okay. You can just watch us, and like we said, the recording will be available. Maybe Carlos and Jing, do you all want to say a few words just to help kick us off?
Yeah, I can jump in here. Hi, everyone. Really excited for all of you in today's training. I was the person who was likely sending the emails to join. And in the instance that, you know, some of the files or links are not working for you, and from the email, the link for the website on the hub, you should be able to download it from there. So just repost it again in the chat for you. And I'll put it at the top, just in case. Thanks.
From me, it's just greeting to all. And I hope you will enjoy this and learn a lot. Yeah, so thanks, Cam and Jim, for organizing.
Great. Well, I'll go into presentation mode here just for a moment. And hopefully you all can see these slides. Let me know if not. And our first slide, well, we can also put this link in the chat if Jing or someone could help me do that. It might be in the top if you arrived early, top of the chat. This page is where you can download QGIS, or some people call it QGIS. QGIS, whatever you call it, you can download it and it can work on whatever computer you have, more than likely. So unlike some GIS softwares, which are a little bit more picky on which operating system or platforms they can run on, a great part of QGIS is it can run on practically any computer. And you can visit that webpage. So whether you're on a Mac or Windows, you can start to download and then install that as I go through this presentation. Once the presentation's over, we can take a little break, and we can help anybody having problems with installation. And we can try and sort some of those out so that as many people as possible can follow along with the step-by-step. And I'm not, as I'm sharing my screen, I'm not able to see the chat. So if my colleagues could help out with that, that would be much appreciated. Great. So a little introduction of our team. We're the WHO GIS Center for Health, as we mentioned. Here's all of our beautiful faces. And we do a lot of different things within and both internally and externally with WHO. So actually right now I'm in Ankara, Turkey. Just finished a day of GIS training with some Ministry of Health people here in Ankara. And we do a lot of these GIS trainings, both in person and virtually, to support GIS tools and capacity building. We also support teams internally and create a lot of maps. We create a lot of maps and GIS products, cartography products for the organization. We have a hub page. So this link here, you can scan the QR code to visit our hub. This is kind of where we put all of our resources. There's links to data. We'll actually use this hub quite a bit during the next few hours of this workshop. There is a page on here on the top tab. You can see Learning Series, and this Learning Series that we're in right now has a page for itself. where to access the documents and materials. And there's many resources on this hub. So this is where we will continue in the future to add new things. And feel free to bookmark this and visit it frequently. There's also ways on this page you can reach out to us for a request for some maps or for other training and support as needed. Okay, so maybe before we get too much further, we should just make sure level the playing field, make sure everybody's aware what is this GIS thing we keep talking about. So GIS stands for Geographic Information Systems, and it's a large and growing science. We call it a science, but it's also kind of an art. Map making is definitely has one foot in data science, and maps are also very useful in storytelling and communication and education. So GIS people, we like to think of ourselves as a diverse group, and we do lots of technical things, but we also, it's very important that we make products that are understandable and can communicate and tell stories well. So we'll use this one tool today that hopefully can give you a good idea if you're new to GIS, some of the things that it can do by making a pretty simple map by the end of the workshop, and play around with some spatial data. So there's many different GIS tools that exist out there. And in this workshop, we just cover one, but our center does have materials for many different GIS tools in all shapes and sizes. And we're hard at work developing even more educational materials and workshop materials within WHO to offer to help build capacity in these various tools. So I broke it down into these three categories: desktop GIS, web GIS, and kind of data processing and analysis. I think there'd be many ways to slice and dice the many tools that exist out there. But I think this kind of gives you an idea of the various methods and all the things that kind of qualify as GIS or at least touch the GIS field. In terms of desktop GIS, so these are kind of the more beefy softwares, heavy-duty analytical mapping softwares. There's two leaders in that field right now that exist. QGIS, which we're learning today, is one, and ArcGIS Pro is the other. So our team uses both of these extensively. In fact, the in-person training I'm participating in facilitating this week is on ArcGIS Pro. But this workshop will focus on its alternative. These are fairly similar softwares, QGIS. So these two tools are fairly interchangeable. If you know one, it makes it a lot easier to learn the other. So I hope it would be great if some people in the workshop today are really familiar with ArcGIS Pro. You can kind of apply those skills and that knowledge over to QGIS. So here's a list of some things that QGIS, some capabilities and attributes. So a great part of it is that it's free. There's no license required. It's totally open source software. Its developers are some volunteers, but mostly paid by nonprofits and donations of various organizations. So it's a free and always evolving software, but it's used by many large companies and NGOs, even government organizations. A great part of QGIS is it can work on any operating system. So whether you have Windows or Mac or Linux, QGIS is compatible with that. And as I said, it's open source, and kind of because of that, there are a lot of user contributions and very passionate user community, which enables a lot of great training materials and learning resources online for free. It also works well with a lot of other open source GIS tools. So a lot of these open source tools rely on each other or can plug in with each other quite nicely. We can compare that with ArcGIS Pro, which is another great tool. By no means are we advocating for one or the other in this workshop, but here's some of the similarities and differences. So overall, both of these softwares accomplish very similar things and can do many of the same things. ArcGIS Pro does require a license, and if you're interested in that and you don't have one through WHO already, please reach out to us, and we can let you know the options for that. ArcGIS Pro does only work on a Windows operating system. There are some ways to get a Mac to run Windows, and it's very tricky. So pretty much if you have a non-Windows computer, it's tricky to run ArcGIS Pro. And Pro is really like the global industry leader. It is the state-of-the-art GIS software, and it has been for quite some time, even before when it had a different name called ArcMap. As it's evolved, ArcGIS Pro is really the standard. Because it is a proprietary software, there's great technical support that people have access to if you have a license. There's a lot of training materials, not only that we put together, but that the company Esri puts together to support learning and training of this software. And of course, because that company, Esri, or ESRI, makes a lot of software tools that relate to GIS, ArcGIS Pro plugs into those tools very nicely. So ArcGIS Online, Survey 123, Story Maps, there's many tools. Some of them we've even done learning series on in the past, such as Story Maps. All that suite of software plug into each other very nicely, and which is a great benefit of that software package. Okay, so QGIS is not brand new, but it hasn't been around forever. Here's just Google search trends globally. So it's not the most precise way to measure interest. This is not necessarily users, but just how many people are searching for QGIS over time. And you can see there's a pretty consistent trend that it's growing. Here's ArcGIS compared to QGIS, just for fun. You can see the gap is closing, although this isn't a perfect comparison. ArcGIS Pro is probably the equivalent software, so this is kind of just for demonstration purposes. And whenever I show this graph, everyone asks what this big spike is, and that was March 2020, when I think there's a lot of data outliers that happened in many cases around the world that month. Great, just a few more slides talking about QGIS. Here's a map showing those previous Google searches, Google trends. This is the darker shade purple is the amount of searches for QGIS among all searches that contained a GIS search term. The last few years, the Open Source GIS Conference, which just happened last week, I believe, has happened in a few European countries as well as Argentina. I know from experience, South Korea is also a big user and proponent of QGIS. And on the left, you can see how many languages the software is translated in, which is a great benefit and makes it more accessible to more people. So here's the QGIS user interface. If you used ArcMap in the past, it probably looks very familiar to you. And we'll get quite familiar with this interface as we go through all the steps of this training. The main map window you can see is where we'll view our spatial data. On the left is where we'll have a list of many different layers that we'll be looking at and analyzing. And on the top are a lot of buttons. This is kind of our toolbar where there's many different options and tools that we can run. And we'll explain just a few of those, certainly not all of them today. These panels will appear on either side, and if you've used ArcMap or ArcPro, this will look very familiar to you. It's a similar user interface. And so depending on what task we're working on, these panels will appear and we can make changes to our map and our data. Great, so one quick note, a little bit of a technical note, but is important to remember, is that our QGIS projects, which we're going to start a project very soon to go through this workshop, and that project remembers a lot of things about our data, but it doesn't contain the data itself. So we'll download a zipped file of data for this workshop. We'll also connect with some data online as we add some WHO base maps. So your QGIS project file, it's a .qgs or sometimes a .qgz file. It will remember where to find this data, but it doesn't contain it. So it's good to stay organized, and any data you're using for a project, try and keep that in one folder where your project is. If any of these blue arrows, these file paths are broken, then that data won't be able to be rendered in your map. So this is just a little reminder. We'll kind of walk you through how to organize your project and the associated data. But just a little heads up on how all these things interact with each other. Great, so here is kind of the end of the workshop. On the left is the map that we will all make together. The WHO global regions. And on the right is an example of we could, if we have extra time or if people are so inclined, you can make your map extra beautiful by adding some additional things. This is our map request template in QGIS. And if you ever are looking for a map, just to plug our map request process, if you're ever looking for a map like this for your work, please do reach out to us and submit a map request. We'd be more than happy to help you with that. Great, a few last notes. We do have, and our maps try and follow as best we can, the WHO GIS style guide. There are links to this style guide on our hub site. This includes things like text, colors, and icons. And we'll do our best to follow that as well today. I'll mention a few things as we go on how to follow this style guide. And for more information, you can visit this QR code or our hub site. Great. So the next thing before we get going here is to work on installing QGIS and downloading the data for today's workshop as well. We can put this direct link in the chat, or if you want to type in this short link right here, you'll be able to go to this Google Drive where there's a big zip file. You can hit the download button. It'll download a zip file of data. And then remember, you'll have to extract or unzip that data in order to use it. And you can place that unzipped file somewhere on your computer that makes sense to you. Probably not in your downloads folder would be preferred. And if Jing or one of my colleagues could just help and put this link to the Google Drive folder in the chat, that would be big help.
Already done, Cam.
Awesome.
Yep.
We're a great team over here. And I'll leave this up for just another minute if people are using this link, but feel free, it might be easier if you just follow that link in the chat. So once again, this is always a little bit of a tricky part of GIS trainings, is just getting the data folder set up. You can download the data. You can hit this button right here. Hopefully you can see my mouse circling around to download the zip file. Then you'll have to unzip or extract that zip file and place it somewhere on your computer where it's a good place. Suggestion is not in your downloads folder where it might get deleted or moved around. And with that, I'll stop sharing my screen for a moment while we answer a few questions. And we can also field if people are having trouble with the download and installation process. Please let us know in the chat, and we can do our best to. We might create a breakout room to assist with that, or we'll do our best. So if you're all good to go, you have QGIS installed, and you have that data folder, feel free to grab a cup of tea or take a moment to stretch, and we'll hit the ground running here with QGIS in just a moment.
من يصير لنا مثلا أرجع
I do see one question in the chat about the style guide page. I can't remember. You may need a ArcGIS online login for that. But we'll double check that, and we can help you get access to those resources, definitely. You can view our hub site. If you can get to our hub site, I think you should be able to view the style guide. So maybe we should try that first, and we can follow up. Thanks for the question, Aspen. Hi, Catherine. I see your question. That's a good one. I can share my screen. If you actually just go to this first page, right when you go to that link, you don't need to enter this folder, but you can just hit this download button right here at the top. That should download a zip file where all the files that contained inside it are all together. I think that'll be the easiest way to proceed. Okay, and I just created one breakout room. I think that'll allow some of my colleagues to place anybody having installation problems in there. Let me know if that works. If not, sorry about that, and feel free to just follow along as we go through these materials. And hopefully we can help you with installation of QGIS later, and would be happy to provide more support if you reach out to us. So I'll share my screen now. Here's the QGIS interface open, and we'll give everybody another minute or so to come back and before we get going. I should mention as well, we have on our hub site this QGIS Learning Series page. There we have a step-by-step guide. These are all the steps we're going to go through here. There are installation instructions there. Sorry, I should have mentioned that in the beginning. And feel free to open this, which I'll put in the chat as well. As we go through, if you miss any steps or want to refer back later, feel free to refer to this document. If you've been able to open the QGIS software, you might be on the landing page. You can go up to the top, click project and then new project, and then your screen should look fairly similar to mine. There might be a few interface differences depending on your computer, but it should look pretty similar. We have a big blank canvas in the middle, this toolbar at the top, and these panels on the left side. Great. So the first thing we already talked about the interface during the presentation. We're going to add some layers into this box on the bottom left. If your browser panel right here on the left is closed, no problem, but we won't really interact with that too much. In fact, I might just make it a little smaller here. And you'll see all these buttons at the top. We'll play around with those momentarily. So the first step, let's add some data from the big zip folder that we just downloaded. We have a few data files in there that we'll use throughout the project. I will note, I'll show what is contained in that zip file right here. This is the geo package. So this is like a geo database that has several layers in it, and we'll play around and make some maps with those layers here. So within this one file, there's many map layers that we can use. There's also a CSV, so we'll practice adding data from not a spatial ready data format like a geo package or a shapefile, but just from a spreadsheet like a CSV or could be an Excel file. There are some QGIS project files in here. We're going to create our own project, but you can refer to these as kind of like the answer key is this QGIS training one, if you want to refer to it later. And I also added a template here that is just a blank project, but it has our WHO legal approved vector tile base maps already added. So I suggest this would be a great resource for people to save, and feel free to use that in the future. It doesn't mean that if you use this template, your map will guarantee to pass legal clearance, but it will use our vector tile base maps that comply with our policies. There's one other file here that's just the WHO logo. We can throw that on the map at the end of this workshop. Okay, so let's add a layer, our first layer. We can do that by going up to the menu at the top. Note if you're on a Mac, this top toolbar might be in a little bit different place. I'm on a Windows computer right now. Go to Layer, Add Layer, and Add Vector Layer, the first option there. Here we have a Data Source Manager window opens. This is just how we add any data. And we can click this ... button. We can navigate over. 1 second, it'll take me a moment to find this, to wherever you saved your data from the folder that we all downloaded. And let's select that Health Boundaries Geo package to open. So I see the file path here. Sorry, it's a little long on my file path, but we're going to add that Health Boundaries Geo package from the folder that you just downloaded. Once you have that, you can click Add, and a new menu will pop up. There's actually 3 different layers within that geo package, so it's like a geo database. We can store many files or many layers within one geo package file. And for now, let's just add this ADM 0. These are our admin level 0 health boundaries. That'll be the first layer we're going to mess around with today. So I can hit Add Layer, and then after that, I can close that data manager window. Great, so now we have some data. Likely yours is a different color than mine, and that's fine. There's every time you add a layer, it'll just be assigned a random color. And take a moment to just interact with this. So we can, by default, you're probably in pan mode, which is this little like Mickey Mouse glove hand at the top there. And you can click and drag to move around, just like a lot of maps you might interact with on the internet. You can also, if you have a mouse scroll wheel, you can zoom in and zoom out. And take a moment to just familiarize yourself with that. It might be a little different than some tools you're used to working with. And you can check out and explore some places of these admin 0 health boundaries that we just added. If you ever get lost, sometimes you might zoom in and not be able to find where you are. You can always right-click on a layer and say zoom to layer, and it'll pop you back to where you can see the full extent of whatever layer you chose.
Hey Cam, maybe you could say in the style guide what step you are on right now. I think that might help folks follow along.
Sure. I can pull it up, and right now we will save our projects.
Sorry to interrupt again, but if you could do the steps a bit slower, that we can easily catch up at your
Certainly.
demonstration. So sorry for interruption again.
No problem. Thank you for that. And yeah, I'll repeat all these steps as we go. Regardless of which step you're on, if you have QGIS open, we should just save this as a new project. That way we can come back to it. So whether you have this data added or not, as long as you have QGIS open, you can go to Project at the top, click Save As, and I suggest that you navigate over to the same place wherever you saved your data folder, and you can name it something like QGIS Training, WHO, or whatever name you prefer, and save that in the same place, the folder that you recently downloaded. Then at the top, you should see your project name. And if I forget, you can help remind me to just hit this save button in the top left corner, that blue floppy disk icon. Every so often, as we go through. That way, if something happens, the software crashes, or your computer runs out of battery, you'll be able to return to exactly where you left off. And I'll repeat again, so I'll actually just remove this layer. If you have it, please just keep it on there. But to add our first layer, if you have a blank map, we can go up to Layer at the top and Add Layer and add Vector Layer, the first option right there. This window will open, and you can hit this button that has the 3 dots right here and navigate over to wherever the file is, the folder that you downloaded a moment ago. And let's select that health boundaries.gpkg, the health boundaries geopackage that has pretty much all the data we're going to work with throughout the workshop. When you have that, you can click Add. This next window will open, and let's just choose, of the 3 layers that are in that geopackage, this ADM0 layer. These are our admin 0 health boundaries. And I'll click Add Layers. You can see behind the window, I have a world map. I have some data there, and I can close this window. I'll show you one other trick. This is a great feature of QGIS. And in general, it's a very flexible software. It can read and write practically any file type you can use in GIS software, various software tools. And an easier way to add, so I showed kind of the textbook way, how to add a layer there, add some data. You can also just drag and drop any file. So I'm going to drag and drop my health boundaries geopackage onto the QGIS window. You'll see the same window pops up. I can choose my admin 0 health boundaries, and I can hit add, and that will add that same layer. You can actually do this with some file types, even if they are still zipped, like a zipped shape file. You can just add it directly onto QGIS. No need to unzip it. There are a few limitations if it's still zipped, but usually the first thing I do if I come across some data and it's a strange file type I'm not familiar with, I just drag and drop it on QGIS and see if I'm lucky and if it can just open right up. And often that is the case. I did see a question in the chat of the background color. That's very interesting. That it's that bright yellow color. If your background color is white, like this, no need to worry about that. But I can show, if you go into Project and Properties here on the top, under this General tab, you are able to change the background color here of your project. It can be nice to turn it to a dark color if you are working late at night or many hours in a day, for example. But for this demonstration, I have everything set up as kind of the default settings. So Florence, I hope that helps with your problem there. But if not, it's not really a problem. You just have a bright yellow background on your map that'll be very lively.
Hey, Cam, I'm just going to chime in and let everyone know that right now in the modules, we're right before exercise 6 on page 8. And, if you have any other questions right now, we can take a quick pause so folks can chime in.
Thank you, Jane.
Okay, if everyone's all right, maybe we'll move forward. Thanks, Cam.
Great. So yeah, starting exercise 6, we already mentioned the pan tool. That's that kind of white glove button at the top. That allows you to, your cursor will be that hand icon, and that allows you to click and drag to move around on the map. And you can also zoom with whether you have a trackpad on your computer or a mouse scroll. Great. So the next thing we can do, there's another, I can go through some other tools up on this toolbar. There is the identify tool. It's that little blue circle with a white eye in the middle. And that allows us, our cursor will change, and that allows us to click on features. So each of these polygons is called a feature. And we can click on them. And on the right, we will see all the attributes, so a bunch of information related to each feature. I will mention that this map is not yet legally compliant. In a few minutes, we're going to add the WHO base maps both below and above this. So these are not yet our legal borders that are showing our disputed areas. And that's important to note as we just get started. We just added these health boundary polygons and we're investigating them. But some of you might see some areas on the map or lines on the map that you don't necessarily agree with or wish that we were symbolizing them in a different way, and we will get there. I do promise. So that's the identify tool up at the top. And what I always say in any GIS training is if you are fast or more advanced, feel free to play around, and you can't break anything. So we're making sure we keep everybody up to speed. And if you're ahead, or feel free to investigate this data further at your own pace. Then one other tool on this top toolbar is the select tool. So these are kind of 3 ways that we can interact with data that we have displayed on the map. That yellow box with a white arrow up on your toolbar, some of these buttons may be in slightly different places on your screen compared to mine. But that select tool, the yellow box, will allow us to select features. This looks similar to this identify features, but we'll see the difference soon. We can even select many features. So again, just to review, the Mickey Mouse white glove is pan mode. That allows us just to move around the map. We're not interacting with anything that is displayed. We have identify, which allows us to see the attributes one by one on the right side here. That's that blue circle with an eye in the top toolbar. And then we have the selection mode. So that's that yellow square with the white pointer cursor icon, and that allows us to select stuff. And in the next step, it'll be more clear what the selection does. Right now, it just looks like it turns them this yellow color, but you'll see what it does in a moment. And good point, I see Florence in the chat. Yeah, by default, some of your buttons on this toolbar for right now and the rest of the workshop may be in slightly different places than mine. It's something I've tried to make consistent, but it's not always easy to do. So if my select button is right here, you may need to look around and find where it is on your screen.
Just a comment on that is that eventually, if you keep working with QGIS, you can set up the buttons the way you want, and you will be adding more and more buttons if you add more tools. So yeah, you just have to, at the beginning, just see where they are, the basic ones, and then start to build up from that.
Awesome. Thank you, Carlos. Yeah, sometimes you see people working with QGIS and they have like six rows of these buttons way at the top of their screen there. And I see the question about selecting. So yeah, we can select multiple countries if we click and draw a box. You can also select multiple if you hold down Shift, or on some computers it might be Control, and that allows you to select non-neighboring features. Hopefully that answers your questions. Great, so I think next, let's open the attribute table. So this allows us to see all of the data associated with each of these polygons. So a big thing about GIS is it's not only the geometry. These, in my case right now, these are gray polygons that you see, but within the data for these, there's a whole bunch of other information associated with each one. So for example, I'm in Turkey right now. We can investigate what data is kind of built into this file that we have. So to open the attribute table, I can go over to my health boundaries ADM0 layer right here. I can right click and say, open attribute table. That should open on the bottom of your screen. It could be a floating window for some people. If that's the case, I highly suggest pushing this button on the top of that floating window that says doc attribute table. Oops. Let's see. Doc attribute table. You might need to click and drag and kind of pull it down to the bottom of your screen. That way it's kind of locked in down there. I much prefer it this way. Otherwise, if you prefer, you can have it as a floating window. Sometimes that's useful too. But probably in this workshop, if you're looking at my demonstration and at your own QGIS, there's a lot of windows already that are popping up. Great. So now we have this big table here. I can scroll down. There's how many rows? 241 rows to this table and a whole bunch of columns. So what this table is one row is for each feature shown on the map. So for example, I've selected one feature here, and that is associated with one row in this column. We can scroll down and try and find it. It might take a little while. One thing we can do is sort the columns, just like an Excel file, for example, and that can help you navigate around. So I can scroll down here, since now these admin 0 names are in alphabetical order. And I can find, great, there's the one I've selected. So you'll note when you select a feature on the map, it will be selected in the attribute table. Also, the opposite is true. I just clicked on a blank area to unselect, and I can then click the row number in the attribute table, and it will select that feature on the map. So it goes both ways. You can select things on the map like this, or you can select things in the table and they'll show up on the map. So that can be quite useful. So in this data, I see now this blue highlighted row is all the information we have for this selected area of Turkey. And if a lot of this looks like confusing information to you, don't worry. Often in the attribute table, there's a lot of kind of cryptic information, or it might be hard to understand as you're new to it, or even if you've used it for a while, there's often columns, I don't know what they mean. So don't worry about that. But there are some columns that we can tell what they mean fairly quickly. So of course, we have our admin 0 name of each area. Very important column here is what WHO region each area is in, and we're going to use that to make our map later in the workshop. There's these ISO 3 codes. This is a unique 3-letter abbreviation for each area. And so on. You can see a lot of information associated with each one. A couple other steps here, and then maybe we'll take a short break. That'll be the end of module 1. Is as before, we can select many areas, and those will of course be reflected in the attribute table as we already mentioned. Sometimes, since this table is so big with more than 200 rows, it might not be so easy to find or sort through. So a really useful way, for example, I'll select some countries here in West Africa. I can change my attribute table so I'm only looking at those that are selected. So I can click down here in the bottom left corner of the attribute table. And instead of saying show all features, as we're showing now, we can show just selected features. So now as I select things, those are showing up only the selections in the attribute table. So that's really useful, especially when you're working with bigger and bigger data sets. You don't have to sift through the many, many rows of that table. Great. You can also do another cool way of looking at the attribute table is show features visible on the map. That's the third option there. I don't use this one too much, but there's some situations where it's very useful. So now if I zoom in, for example, I'm here in Western Europe, I can only see on my map window, my map pane, Spain and Portugal, and Spain and Portugal are the only two features visible in the attribute table. As I zoom out, more and more features will appear in the table, and so on. So here, if I zoom in, now I can only see Dominican Republic and Haiti in the attribute table, and as I zoom out, I see more and more. I'll change this back to show all features, but I think hope that helps you see how each feature relates to this big table, and we're going to use this table extensively in the rest of the workshop. Just a reminder to save your projects, and let's check the chat and see if there's anything else going on. Otherwise, that's the end of module 1 if you're following along in the documents.
Hey, Cam, do you mind showing the attribute table again and how to dock it?
For sure. So yeah, often by default, that attribute table might just be floating around. On the top of the table, there's all these buttons. The furthest right one, if you're on a Mac, it might be the second to furthest right one. I can't remember, is dock attribute table. And if you click that, it should lock down at the bottom. Earlier when I did it, it didn't quite lock. You can also click the top of the table to drag it and kind of push it down on the bottom there. And eventually you should be able to get it to lock to the bottom of your screen. But hopefully that helped. And yeah, once more, I see some other questions. So to select, sometimes if you're in your cursor is in a different mode, like pan mode here, I can just move around on the map. But if I'm trying to select Brazil, I can't. You'll just need to go up on your toolbar and turn on Select Features. I believe the keyboard shortcut for that is S, if I'm not mistaken, although that might be one that I made custom. Sorry if that's the case. And you can click on that feature and select it. And then that will be reflected in the attribute table. Great. Well, that was already 1 hour. I know that was a lot. That was the end of module 1, just kind of getting started. As a reminder, I'd save your projects. And then let's take 5. We can address any further questions in the chat. And we'll resume module 2 at about 5 minutes after the hour. Thank you. Okay, I think we'll start back up here momentarily. And if you're following along in our documents, we've just finished module 1. We've investigated our data. We've learned to select, and we are just going to start module 2. So the first thing we're going to discuss are projections and coordinate reference systems. Just a reminder to save your projects if you haven't already done so. And for now, you can close your attribute table so you just see a world map on your screen. Okay, I do see in the chat, sorry, I mentioned that the to turn on select mode was S. Sounds like that is a shortcut I designated, so sorry about that. Thanks, Carlos, for pointing that out. But that is a lesson you can, once you get used to using QGIS and you find there's certain things you'd like to do. It's a very flexible software, and you are able in the settings to create your own keyboard shortcuts for actions or tools that you do a lot. That's quite useful and can save you and your wrist a lot of carpal tunnel and a lot of clicking. And one other just a public service announcement as we start module 2. I know we haven't added our WHO legal approved base maps yet. So I know that these boundaries shown here, these are not WHO compliant boundaries just yet, but we will get there. So just another announcement regarding that. Great. So the next thing we'll do is talk about projections or coordinate reference systems. So I don't have a slide or visual for this, but hopefully as we change our projections on this map, it'll make sense as to what they are. So the Earth is this spheroid. It's a round object, but most maps that we have are flat, whether it's on a screen or a piece of paper. Most maps are flat. So to convert a round object into a flat object, it requires some stretching or compressing or manipulating that surface in order to take it from 3D into 2D. So we call those projections or coordinate reference systems. Right now, if anybody kind of feels like this world map does look a little oddly shaped, you wouldn't be alone. So this projection by default is the coordinate reference system that the data we added is in. So whenever you add some data to your map, as we earlier just dragged our health boundaries onto the map, our QGIS project picked that projection. And this is a very common one for GIS data. It's called WGS 1984 or WGS 84. And it uses like latitude, longitude, those style coordinates to just plot the map onto the screen.
Yeah, sorry for interruption. I'm not seeing from my end. The screen is not showing here.
Oh, screen's not sharing? Okay, let me try again. Thank you for that. Are people able to see it now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, sorry about that. Thanks for letting me know. And yeah, feel free to please interrupt if there's any other questions or things that are popping up for everybody. Great, so yeah, if the shape of the map on my screen looks a little different than you're used to seeing, especially like on a if you're using Google Maps or something like that, it is indeed a different shape. So let's play around and change some of the projections. So in the very bottom right corner of your QGIS window, you should see it's not the farthest right button, but one in this kind of cryptic area with a little globe icon that says EPSG, and probably everybody says 4326. That's the current number code for our projection. But if you click that EPSG, a new window should open. And this is where we can change what the projection is. And I will just mention this step, projections are a little bit of a tricky and sometimes kind of tedious or annoying step that in GIS. But the reason I want to cover it is because they can be kind of a roadblock as people just start on a project trying to look at some data and it's not showing up in the right place. So if this part is confusing, please don't be discouraged as we're going through it. So our current projection is WGS 84, but I will ask everybody to type in 3857, this 4-digit code, 3857. And just to make it easy, maybe we could throw that in the chat. That'll pop up a new coordinate reference system here called pseudo Mercator, called WGS 84 pseudo Mercator. It might be in the bottom box for you. And you can select that one and hit OK. And you'll notice that your map has really changed shape. This shape of the map might look quite strange in some ways, or it might look quite familiar. Many web maps use this projection. So one more time, I click down here in the bottom right corner where it says EPSG. That opens this menu where there's many projections we can choose from. And in this workshop, we won't go through too many others, but I do encourage you to look through and find different projections. If you're mapping a small area, there might be really good projections for that area that aren't great on a global scale, and vice versa. There's some projections that are best on a global scale that might not be quite as good depending on if you're mapping a smaller area. So there's many of these different projections and coordinate reference systems to choose from. This one, 3857, will be really good when we add base maps in the next couple steps. And it is the base map that many maps you see online, web maps, use. So again, I typed in 3857 into here. And this would be, if you're going to only stick to 1 or 2 projections, this would be one I would suggest. Again, it's not perfect. You can see there's a huge spatial exaggeration as you get farther away from the equator. So like Alaska, Canada, Greenland, Scandinavia, Russia, they're really stretched and exaggeratedly large. That's a downside of this projection, but there's some upsides too. So direction is maintained quite well. So if you zoom way into anywhere on the globe, a 90-degree turn east, for example, will be a 90-degree turn east on the map. So each projection has its pros and cons, and let's use this one for the rest of the workshop. There are in the materials, I'll pop over to those, some comparisons of the different projections. Eckert 3 is one, for example, that we use for a lot of WHO maps. That's this middle one here. National Geographic maps use what's called Winkel triple projection. So there's many that all look different and they have different pros and cons. Great, so that's projections. Let us know if you have any questions. And again, if that was a tedious part, don't be discouraged. Projections are kind of this strange thing, but often you can find a few that work really well for your area or the scale that you work at, and you can stick to those. Okay, cool. So next, let's move on. This is exercise 2 of module 2, and let's change this layer's symbology. So symbology means just how any data is visually represented. Right now, mine is these kind of ugly gray polygons, very neutral looking world map. Yours are likely a different color as they're just assigned a random color, but let's change that. So if I click on my layer here in the layers panel, where we only have our one health boundaries layer, I can right click and go to properties for that layer. And that will open this really big menu. So we'll spend some time in this big menu today. There's a lot of things to cover in here. But for now, we can choose symbology, which is the 3rd tab down on that left side. So symbology is, like I said, the way that we visualize any data. And the first thing we could do is we can change the color. So GIS is not all about numbers and data, but we get to be a little fun and creative here. Feel free to just change the color. Maybe I'll choose a bright pink or something, and I can change the color. I can hit OK, and my map will change colors. Feel free to take some time to play around and choose some different colors for your map and get familiar with that menu. So again, I can right-click on my layer, can go to Properties at the bottom. That will open this big Layer Properties menu, and we are here in the third tab down, the Symbology menu. And I can click on the color, and I can choose various colors. If you have specific colors you'd like, you can enter like HTML color codes here. There's a lot of different ways that you can select which color. I tend to like this kind of color wheel thing, and then you can fine tune colors in this way. We do have with our style guide specific colors that are kind of on brand for WHO, and we can get you that information as well. I do see the question in the chat, and thanks for answering that. That's probably one a lot of people have, is yeah, if you have things selected and you want to unselect them, there's a few ways to do it. One, you can just click where there's no features, like on some water in this case, like on an ocean, and that will unselect features. Another way you can do it, I have some things selected here, is 2 buttons to the right of your select features mode is yellow boxes with a little red no sign, and that's deselect features, so that can deselect any features. Sometimes you might not have empty area of water bodies in this case to click on to cancel the selection, so that button can get you as well. Okay, so I hope you're all having fun changing the colors and playing around with that. There are other things we can mess around with in this menu. We can change the outline color or take the outline away if we want of these polygons. There's many things we can do. We can change the gradients. It doesn't have to just be a solid color. We can add pattern fills and all sorts of stuff. You can see hashed fills here in these suggested symbologies. But for now, I think just changing the colors gets the point across, and then we're going to change our symbology style. Cool. So next, I'll give you a little tip or a shortcut. I know you're juggling a lot of windows with the Teams call, which has my demo, and your own window. And when we open this layer properties, it's yet another window to juggle. So you can close that, and actually you can push this up in your layers panel on the left. The farthest left icon is this little paintbrush icon. If you click that, it'll open a panel on the right side. And this is the symbology panel. So it's that pretty much that same menu. It's a little bit of a minimal version of that menu we had open. But the really nice thing about this is now I can change a color, and I don't have to close that window or it's not floating over it. I can see those changes live as I change things. Hopefully this isn't making people dizzy as I am demonstrating this. Great. So let's keep that open, that panel open for a second. And if you missed that, to open that panel, it's this little paintbrush icon, the farthest left icon on your layers panel on the left side. So
Hey,
actually,
Jane.
well, yeah.
Sorry,
Hey, Jane.
before you get too far ahead, do you mind just repeating that step one more time because the screen was frozen for
Sure,
one of
sure.
our members? Yeah, thanks.
Sure. So earlier I mentioned if we want to change the symbology, how a layer looks, we can right click on that layer and open properties. And we have this symbology menu here in that layer properties window. So that's great. This has a lot of options here, but sometimes it's hard to juggle so many windows. So to open a panel that's kind of locked or docked to the right side of your screen, you can click this little paintbrush icon. It's on your layer panel all the way to the left. Hopefully you can see my mouse wiggling over it. And that, if you push that button, it'll open your layer styling panel here on the right side. And that allows us to have it docked on our window. Now we can change the style of our layer without having multiple windows overlapping each other. And that just one other note, hopefully that answered your question. Sometimes if, for example, I did open my layer properties and then I click, well, I can't do it right now, but sometimes a window might get stuck behind your main window and not allow you to click things, or things can get confusing. So that's just something to keep in mind. Sometimes there might be multiple windows open. If you're not allowed to interact with the interface, it might be because a window is kind of hidden behind something else, maybe even my demo video somewhere else on your screen. So it's nice to reduce the number of windows popping up, and we can have this symbology panel over here on the right side. We can just leave that up for the rest of the workshop. Okay, I'm just saving my map every so often. And let's catch up with the chat here and before we move on. Great, we're looking good. Okay, so next thing is let's change how this layer is symbolized. So right now it's called single symbol. You can see that here on the top of my layer styling panel on the right. All the areas, the polygons, are shown as the same exact thing, right? For me right now, it's this like mustard yellow color. Maybe we want to change how that is so different areas appear different. We can change that from single symbol, and let's choose categorized. Oh, everything disappeared, but that's okay. So we're going to categorize by color these polygons based on some values in the attribute table. So first, let's choose admin 0 name. Okay. So we're going to have different colors for each different name of area. I can click classify here just below that blank window. That's an easy step to forget. You have to hit this classify button right here. And once you click that classify button, the software will look through that big attribute table of 200 some rows, and it'll find every unique value in the name column that we specified here, and it will assign a random color to those. So this map looks a little busy, very colorful, but it demonstrates that we can use the GIS software to visualize data, right? So it's looking through that big table, it's assigning, in this case, color, and we can use other symbolizing techniques to display data, and that's what maps are all about. If you don't like those colors, you can change them one by one here. You can also choose, you can shuffle your color ramp. Here, where I click random colors, you can just shuffle the random colors. It's kind of fun. Or you can choose from many different color ramps in this menu here. For our purposes, probably random colors is a good way to go. But you can see there's a lot of built-in color ramps. Some of them can be used in various situations to map different kinds of things, not only categories, but values, as we'll do later in the workshop. Play around with colors. I can uncheck things here, which will turn those features off. And you'll see back on your layers panel, if you're on a Mac, it'll be a little arrow. On a PC, it's this little plus sign. I can click that next to my layer, and it's kind of like a legend or a preview of the legend. This is a very long one because there's many areas in this data set. But you can see that we can get a preview of how this layer is symbolized. Okay, I see one message in the chat is somebody was unable to change to the projection. That's okay. I think you'll actually be able to do the rest of the workshop in the default projection. But during one of the breaks, I can show how to do that again. So again, the last step, just to recap, we're changing the layer symbology. We opened this layer styling panel with this little paintbrush icon up here. And at first, we were symbolizing all these areas as single symbols. So just everything was symbolized the same. We changed the colors and we saw we can customize how each one is symbolized. But then we changed the symbology method to categorized. And we chose the field admin0name. So we're categorizing these by their name, each area. We hit this classify button down here, and that will assign a random color to each area. So our example here, and for this whole workshop, remember, we just have some of this example global data, but these same methods can be applied no matter what the data set is that you're working on, right? So whether you're working in a very small scale area, disease cases, water bodies, roads, whatever it might be, these same methods can be applied to those different data sets. Great. So let's change our field that we're categorizing. Now each area is given a random color, but let's do something a little bit more analytical rather than just saying, okay, well, all these areas are different. They're different rows in our table. They have different names. So instead of admin0, we still will keep categorized as the method of symbolization, but let's change value from admin0 name to WHO region. We'll have to, again, push this classify button down here. QGIS will nervously warn you, are you sure you want to do this? And let's say yes. And now, this is pretty cool. Now, each area is not just a unique color unto itself, but we've categorized each area by the WHO global regions. So you can see Afro, AMRO, EMRO, Euro, CIRO, and WIPRO. Great. Again, just like we did before, you can adjust those colors one by one. If there's kind of similar ones of neighboring regions, you might want to change those to make them distinguishable, or just to your color preferences. Again, you can shuffle the random colors, choose them one by one and change them, and you can customize things that way. So once again, I changed. We were looking at admin0 names, the names of each health region, and I just selected WHO regions, and I pushed this classify button down here. So now, once again, this is similar to our previous map, but hopefully it demonstrates that we can use color in this case as one way of symbolizing data to show differences, different categories. So we're looking at text. The software is looking at all the rows in that big attribute table we checked out earlier. It's finding the unique values. So in this case, for the WHO regions, all the unique regions, and it's applying a color to each of those categories. Later on in the training, we'll explore some other methods of symbolizing, like graduated, where we can look at numbers. So right now, we're looking at text fields in our attribute table. But if we have some numeric quantitative fields in our table, like numbers, we can also use colors to show numbers. Now, there's a lot of ways. That's what mapping is all about, is visualizing, symbolizing data. Cool, I'm just going to keep saving my project every time we have a little break, and check the chat before we go to the next. Yeah, I do see a bunch of questions in the chat about those projections again, so I'll just touch on that again really quick. For this process, this workshop, I chose this pseudo Mercator projection. This is also called Web Mercator. It's used in a lot of web maps, and I chose that specifically for our next step, which is adding base maps. This will be friendly to a lot of base maps we'll use. But the one question, I think it was from Florence, that's not necessarily the one WHO base maps or WHO maps prefers. Actually, it's not. But in the next step, we'll learn how to add many different base maps, not just the WHO ones. And that projection will make those load a lot faster. And I thought it'd be good both for my computer and for all of you, so that they load quickly, but they can load in other projections as well. Cool, I hope that helps. So again, to change the projection, you click in the bottom right-hand corner, EPSG, that button. And I typed 3857 up here. And if pseudo Mercator pops up, that's this Web Mercator, you can select that and hit OK, and it should change your map. Great, and then I see somebody says their map is disappearing when they change to categorized. I know why. It happened to mine too. So I changed to categorize and everything disappears. Uh-oh. Okay, well, that's fine. We can just select which value we want to categorize. So let's choose WHO regions. And then this is the step that is often forgotten. I just have to click this classify button down here. And there we go. Now, when I click that button, it'll look and find all the unique values of those WHO regions in each feature, list them here, and apply a unique color to each one. Now, I might just change this color. A lot of times, red is used on maps to show something alarming or emergent. So let's change, let's see here. How about this nice bluish green color for the Wipro region? That's just an example. You can change one by one each of these colors to customize them. Great, and yeah, thanks for the questions. And I would encourage everybody. I was saying this a lot in the training I did earlier today as well. You can't break anything here. You can always return that zip folder you downloaded. You can just download that again or unzip it and go back. So don't feel like you need to be delicate or careful with any of the data. I encourage you strongly to play around and click buttons and can't break anything. There is, as I mentioned, that completed project in the data folder right here called QGIS training. And that can kind of be like your answer key. If you get, maybe if you joined quite late, you can always open that project. That connects to the same geo database, or sorry, geo package. And that will kind of be the final step where we're all working towards. So I encourage you to play around and get creative as we go along. Cool. So next, this is exercise number 3. Let's add some base maps to this. And to do that, it'll be a couple step process. So we're going to install a plugin here. And plugins are a really cool part of QGIS. Actually, anybody can create a plugin and add it to GIS or QGIS. And this one plugin that we're going to install is kind of a crucial one. So that allows us to add many different base maps. And after we install this plugin, we'll mess around with some base maps, and then we'll add the WHO vector tile base maps as well. So actually, I'm going to just uncheck my health boundaries layer. So you can note that the layers in this layer panel, if you uncheck them, they will disappear. And soon we're going to have many layers over here, and that'll make more sense. So if you click on plugins on your top toolbar, if you're on a Mac, it'll be in a little different place, but you should find plugins somewhere up there, and you can click manage and install plugins. Okay, so this new window should pop up. And in this plugin window, let's search for a plugin called Quick Map Services. So make sure on this left tab, you have the all selected. And if you just type in Quick Map, one word, you should see this plugin called Quick Map Services. You can click in the bottom right-hand corner, Install Plugin, and you should be able to install that. I see some people unable to get local issuer certificate, something like that. Yeah, there might be some, there's various kind of technical or permissions reasons why you might have a problem here. If not, no worries, you can just watch this next step, and I believe you'll be able to add our WHO vector tile base maps, no problem. It'll be different and doesn't require this plugin. So for me, it doesn't say install plugin because I already have it installed, but you can click that. And it should only take a moment. It's a very small file. And once that's done, you can click close. So again, we're searching in the plugins toolbar on the top, manage and install plugins. We searched, make sure it's all is clicked on this left tab. Searched Quick Map Services, it's all one word. Install the plugin and click close. And I'm going to just save my project again while we're at it. Yeah, and if you weren't able to install it again, no worries. But this is a good one. I've even heard, I think, in subsequent versions of QGIS, this may be just a part of the base software. Okay, it looks like Florence maybe has some advice on how to troubleshoot that. Thank you. Okay, so once that's installed, if you click Web at the top on that top toolbar or menu bar, you should have Quick Map Services there. So sometimes when you install a plugin, there'll be new buttons on your top toolbar. And in fact, these little blue globe icons you can see here are Quick Map Services, the plugin we just installed. And the plugins might show up in different places. This one shows up in this web menu that says Quick Map Services. Now, you probably have less options here than I do. I can show you later, maybe at the end of the workshop, if we have extra time, how to acquire all these different free base maps. But I know that you all should have this OSM standard base map as an option. So again, up on the top toolbar, we can open Quick Map Services, that says plugin, and we can go to OSM standard. So I know that was a few steps to just get a base map, but now we have this great OpenStreetMap base map. This is public data, so this is not WHO affiliated data at all, but OpenStreetMap is a great base map that's open source also, and this data and map is used quite widely in a lot of applications. And I know that there was a few technical problems with the plugins, but it's just an example. There's so many plugins. You don't have to go back into that menu, but just want to show there's so many plugins. These are like add-on tools to QGIS. You can see just the ridiculous amount of them that there are. Some of these are very general, like the one we installed, and some of them are very specific for certain jobs. So feel free to check those out if you do ever come across something that says there's a QGIS plugin for some task. Then yeah, now you know how to install it. I see some people see meta search under web. Okay, if you don't see Quick Map Services there, you might find these little blue globe icons on your toolbar, and that will allow you to also find this menu to add this OSM map. There is another one that you can search quick map services over here, and you can search for things. So you could, for example, search for Google satellite. And it might take a moment, but you could add the Google satellite base map. One moment. And now we have multiple layers over here. So I added Google satellite. And if you weren't able to add that, that's okay. I'm just showing for demonstration purposes. But we have multiple layers. I can't see that satellite one. That's because I have this OSM one on top. So I can uncheck that. And there we go. Now we can see it. So remember, I can add my health boundaries on top. Remember that these layers are drawn in order. So the topmost layer will be drawn on top, and so on and so forth down to the bottom. You can click and drag to rearrange these. So my health boundaries just disappeared because they're on the bottom. They're hidden by the Google satellite now. So anyway, let's keep those health boundaries on the top at this point. And let's go back to our OpenStreetMap base map. I see in the chat, someone says their country names aren't appearing. I bet if you zoom in, likely things will start to appear. So for these base maps, they're not just one image. Like as you zoom, just like a lot of maps you'll interact with online on websites, here's where I'm coming to you from live at the moment. They will change into different images. Speaking of that, you'll notice the little different icons next to each layer. These are this is raster data, which we're not going to work with too much other than base maps today. But these are more like pictures. So we can't select anything on these because it's more like an image. It's not vector data like our health boundaries where we can select it and have an attribute table. So you can think of these base maps more like images. They're just the backdrop that we can lay our data over. I see some questions about OpenStreetMap and stuff. Yeah, we won't go too deep into that, but it is open source, publicly available data. It's not affiliated with Google Maps or anything like that. It's quite separate. And again, to search, so you can hit that blue globe icon that should pop up when you've installed the plugin. Somewhere on your top toolbar, you can hit the search, and there you can search for many different base maps. Another one, you can type in the word dark. There's a black background base map. I think it's called dark matter. That's a nice one if you're working late at night. Anyways, we don't need to spend too much time on those. Just wanted to show a plugin and how that works. I'm actually going to right click and say remove layer on my Google satellite. And I just have my OpenStreetMap below my health boundaries. Okay. So that was a plugin. And next, we're going to add the WHO base map, which will be very useful, I hope, in all of your work. And it will make our map closer to legal compliance and show our disputed borders and boundaries and areas. And that will be very helpful for us. To do that, I'm going to open, oops. I'm going to open this page. Let's see if I can find it. Sorry, you just saw the music I was listening to right before this workshop. I'll add, or if maybe Jing, you could help me add this link to the chat. This is where you can find all of WHO's vector tile base maps. And we're going to use these links. We're going to copy and paste these links to add them to our project. This is on our hub. And we'll also include these links, just put them in the chat. That'll probably be easiest for everyone. Great. Any other things to the team that's popping up before we do this next step? Thank you, Jing, for adding that. Okay, I think we're doing good. Great. So the first step to add these other type of base maps is let's go back to layer on the top menu, add layer, and let's choose way down towards the bottom, add vector tile layer. Okay, so this is similar menu we added some data with before, but now we're going to add these things called vector tiles. So this is a different type of base map. It's not quite raster data. It's more like vector data, but it's a little different. So they're vector tiles. And let's go to new here. And let's add a new ArcGIS vector tile service connection. It's pretty long. So if you get this menu open, that's great. I'll go through those steps one more time. Just pause if you were able to open that menu. So I went to layer at the top, add layer, and then add vector tile layer. That opens this menu, and I'm going to click new, and not new generic connection. I'm not going to click that one. I'm going to click the second option, which is new ArcGIS vector tile service connection. Cool. So that'll open this menu. And I'm going to copy and paste this first base map.
Kali
that
udah
page.
dulu ya, nanti Dedi pulang ya. Ya udah.
I'm going to copy and paste this first base map for the disputed areas into the service URL. And let's name this WHO disputed, something like that. Let's just call it WHO disputed. Well, this will be an important one to add on the very top of maps as you're working with data. Okay, I'm going to hit OK. And then I'll click Add. I can close this window. And close some of these other windows that are popping up. And now you'll see, at first you might not notice it, but there are now these disputed areas shown, and now this map is much closer to our legal compliance for map products. So you can see there's gray areas shown for disputed areas. It also includes many water bodies where we don't show the borders on. And there's also many lines here, like for example, you can see now there's this dotted line between North and South Korea. And there's many others on there. So I turn everything off, you'll see like there actually is a layer. It's not really a base map as our OpenStreetMap one was, for example, but there are these features floating around. Our map products should have these and symbolized in these specific ways. If you don't see it, make sure that you click and drag your disputed areas onto the top. Your WHO disputed vector map that we just added. Some people are getting an error. I think probably there might be, if you're copy and pasting from the PDF or tutorial document, sometimes some of the links in there, they might have an extra space or some formatting issues. Maybe we can put the exact link in the chat, and that should do it. I think the links are correct, but there might be a little space or a different character or something in there. So let's make sure we add the URLs like just right. It can be a little tricky. So again, I went to layer. I can go to add layer, add vector tile layer. And here I'll create yet another one. So I'm going to add a new ArcGIS vector tile connection. I'll go over to that base maps page on our hub. And how about I'll add this one that has no labels. So I'm choosing the polygon base map, no labels. I'm going to copy this URL. Make sure you don't leave out any letters like that H right there. And I believe if if you're copying it from our PDF tutorial, there might be some just formatting issues. Thanks, Carlos, for finding that a couple days ago. And I'm going to copy that. I'm going to paste it in here, and I'll name this one WHO base map. I'll hit OK. I'll click Add again. Oops, I think I added the same one. I have to go in here and click WHO base map. Click Add. There we go. So I might have more connections than you do, since I've added some in preparation for this. But you can select the one that you want to add, hit Add, and we can close this window. Now you'll see this new base map that we just added kind of covers up all the data I already had, so we can click and drag, and I'll put that down at the bottom. I've turned off my OSM base map. I'll turn off even the health boundaries. And now I just have my disputed areas on top. We should always leave that layer on the very top, even over data that we're mapping. And then the base maps usually go on the bottom. So this is cool. Now we have this WHO base map. These are our boundaries. If you zoom in, you can see we have administrative level 2, and in some cases we even have administrative level 3 boundaries. And these base maps have all of our legally compliant features included in them. And we keep these updated. The great part of this is the health boundaries we added in the beginning. Those are data that's living on your computer right now. But these vector tile maps, this is pulling from the internet. So you do need an internet connection to see these. But as anything gets updated, so as our team updates any boundaries or adds some new data, maybe another administrative level somewhere, or changes a new dispute that has been established in the legal department, these links will stay the same, and your maps will continue to be updated automatically. So that's pretty cool.
Hey, Cam, maybe we could take a pause here to answer some of the questions in the chat.
Great.
So let's see, questions we didn't have answered is, it looks like just a reminder to everybody, when you're copying and pasting the address, making sure that there are no spaces when you copy and paste. When we were designing this module, we did notice that was something in the PDF form, when it was converted over, that it would not transfer well. So we highly recommend leveraging the base map link that Cam, is showing right now on the screen. I see Florence asked a question. Since we pasted a URL, is that something connected online? She's wondering if the map can work offline with this vector tile layer.
Yeah, like I was saying, this is connecting online. There might be ways to download those vector tiles. I'm sure there is a way to do that. We can follow up, and if that's like a important feature to people, we can prepare some materials on how to do that. But right now, as I said, that these are connecting online. Yes.
Okay. And then another question is, I have some resolution issues. How can we enhance the resolution?
I'm not sure. So yeah, some of the borders might look a little choppy, and that might just be due to our data. Some of our admin level 0 or admin level 1 borders are a little bit low resolution in some cases, in some areas. I'm not sure if that's the case for the question in the chat. But otherwise, it might be like, because these are connected to the internet, it might be a connection issue, or I'm not sure. But happy to follow up on that question.
We have a question. Do we need to go through this step every time we have a new project?
Oh, great question. And yeah, like I said, when we were first getting started, in the folder for this, which was a last minute addition that I'm really glad we were able to add, I have this project called WHO template. And I won't open it now because I'll just keep our current workshop project open, but I can open it at the very end. But if you open that after this workshop, that project basically has all of these WHO base maps added. It doesn't have any other data, but it's ready to go for you to have these vector tile legal approved base maps and start mapping your own data and not having to worry about clicking and adding all these things yourself. It's just ready to go.
Just regarding that question, I just add a little bit to the chat that this last step, that was the vector tiles, that is maybe a little bit more clicking, that if you open a new project just now, they will be still there available. So you don't have to repeat that process.
Awesome.
But it's just
Great
for
point.
that specific layer, that specific connection. For any other layers, then you will have to add them.
Right, so my vector tiles here that I've added are saved. There's a couple extras here. Sorry about that, but these will be open in future projects right here in your browser panel. So that's easy. I can then, in the future, just click and drag and add these to my map. Cool, great questions.
I just added the link again for the 2 base maps. There's a number of different base maps that we offer, it's not a single one. And so in the base map link, you can see the different versions of it, you know, with labels, without labels, etc. Okay. These vector, just lots of good questions, everyone. Just want to make sure they're addressed. Okay. I have lost of which link is for who base map. The links, just to help everyone navigate the steps, there's a couple of different links, but right now we are on page 20 of your module, exercise 3.2 about who base maps. And so those steps go through step by step with screenshots of the various different base maps that we're adding. Again, would not advise for you to copy and paste the URL specifically from the PDF, just because the PDF is not able to understand the space in a URL link. So we can update, and I will update, I will make a note of it, that we will link to the base map page on the hub. Let's see, other questions. Let's see, can you please drop, yep, so we did the link. And then, yes, we have some more facilitators. If you have any questions, we can help you directly. Yes, great to have a template. The question, is there any means for us to continue this training? Yes, we will continue the training moving forward. All the steps that we're navigating right now are part of the modules. In this live version, we're just able to answer questions for folks who are still here. So I think we're probably good to keep going now. Thanks, Cam.
Great. So we're now on module 3. We now have some base maps added. We're kind of set up to launch into some more, let's add some more of our own data, not just the base maps. And let's see how to do that. Maybe after module 3, where then we have 2 more quick modules. The modules are pretty short. We'll take one more little break, and then we'll finish modules 4 and 5. That sound good? Cool. So module 3, let's now add some more data, and this data won't be from a ready-to-go mappable file type. Well, it's fairly ready to go, as you'll see. It will be pretty easy to add, but it'll be from a CSV. So this is like a spreadsheet. If you come across a spreadsheet and it has some kind of spatial information, like a latitude, longitude, for example, you'll be able to add that to the map fairly readily. So if you look in your data folder, we have one CSV in there. It's called country. It's a little bit of a long name. ISO 3 sample cases. And these are sample polio cases by country or by health area from several years ago. So it's kind of old data, just some sample disease case data to work with. If we added this to our QGIS, we wouldn't be able to see anything on the map because it's just a table, just a spreadsheet. But we are able to add it. Actually, in fact, why don't I just open it up in Excel really quickly so you can see. It's a pretty simple table. We just have country names. We have these ISO 3 codes, which relate to each area. We have the number of cases. So these are total of, I believe these are polio cases from some time frame. Again, just sample data. Some other information about the cases, a category, a percent. We'll focus on this cases. But the really great thing is I see these two columns here, lon and lat. So that's longitude or longitude and latitude. So these are coordinates. We can just plot these on the map. The QGIS can interpret this and add points right to those locations. Cool. So to do that, we can go to layer and add layer again. We've been in here a few times before. We've added a vector layer and a vector tile layer. This time, let's choose the fourth option down that's called Add Delimited Text Layer. So again, on the top toolbar, I went to Layer, Add Layer, and now I'm at Add Delimited Text Layer. Here, I can hit this ... button. I can navigate over to my data folder. Let's select that country sample cases data that it's a CSV. I can hit open. One sec, I'm just gonna do it again. I think by default, to CSV, here we go. I think my settings might have been a little different. Hopefully, I think yours should look similar to this. Under file format, make sure I have CSV selected. I had recently added a different file type, so mine looked a little different for a second, but I think yours should look similar to this. I have CSV under file format. Yours is likely that by default, we're adding point coordinates here in the geometry definition area. And hopefully, this is pretty cool. The QGIS should have guessed that X and Y fields for these point coordinates should be the columns lon and lat. So it recognized like those are names typically for coordinates.
Sorry for the interruption, sir. We can still only see more.
Oh, I see. Okay, let me share again. Thank you. Thanks for letting me know. Are you able to see it now? Hello?
Yeah, we can see
Not
the
yet.
screen.
It's coming up.
It's okay now? Okay, let me try. I'll do it one more time, just in case. I'll share my whole screen. Let me repeat those steps then. So I'm going to go to Layer, Add Layer, and Add Delimited Text Layer. I'm going to navigate to my CSV in the data folder, the sample case data CSV. And when you do that, a bunch of things should automatically populate here. If not, we can fix it. So file format should be CSV, should be point coordinates, X and Y should be long and lat. And some people, it might say geometry CRS here as invalid or something like that, or unknown. Let's change that to WGS 84. Likely it's one of the options that should be there readily. If not, let us know and we can help add it. So the 4326 WGS 84, that's typically what longitude and latitude are measured in. You should also see this little preview of the table here, just like we looked at before. And if things look good, as they do on my screen, hopefully you can see it okay. Then I think we're pretty much good to go. So under geometry definition, just make sure these things are populated and we can hit add. And I'll close that. And voila, we have all these points now. They each represent one area and those sample cases of polio. So if you're able to add those, that's great. And feel free to now investigate this data as we did with our previous data sets. So we can open the attribute table, we can look at the symbology, and so on. Let's see, in the chat, I see some people are still not able to share the screen or see the screen. Let me know if some people can see it or if that's for everybody. I'll reshare again.
I think we are seeing the screen. It's probably just bandwidth problems in some cases.
Okay, thank you, Carlos. Cool, so sorry for those who aren't able to see. I'll go through those steps one more time. Looks like in the chat some people said they missed it. But if you were able to edit, we'll check out your points. Again, let's put them, actually these cases, we can put them on top or just below the disputed areas. You can right click, open the attribute table, check that out. You can also look at the symbology, change what those points look like. Otherwise, I'll go through the steps one more time for those of you who were not able to edit yet. So we can at the top go to layer and add layer. This time we'll choose the fourth option down, add delimited text layer. Here we can hit this ... button to navigate over to our data folder. We'll add the sample cases data. It's this CSV file. Click open. And likely lots of these things populated automatically. QGIS knows that these are point coordinates and that long and lat fields are the coordinates to choose. Make sure that this says WGS 84, not something like invalid projection or something like that. And if you hit add, you should see the dots appear on your screen. Now, likely different colors than mine. Same as before, these are just random colors assigned every time you add a new layer. Cool. Same with before, we can turn on selection mode. We can select these points just like we did for the polygons. We can even turn on the polygons underneath these. And now that we have multiple layers, remember that the order matters over here in the layer panel. And also for selection, like if I'm trying to, for example, let's see, select Brazil at this moment. Oh, I can't select it. That's because I have my points selected. So you can only select the layer on the map that you have selected in the layer panel. If I now click over here and select the health boundaries, now I can select the Brazil polygon. And I can go back and now select the points. Great. So now we're on step number 7 of this module, if you're following along that way, or exercise number 2. And we can change the symbology for these point layers. So if you click the little paintbrush icon here, you can reopen your styling panel, or I usually just leave that open all the time. And I might just turn off the health boundaries for now. We're styling these as single symbol, so these are just, everything is styled the same. We're these orange dots for me. But we can also style them in other ways, just like we did before with the polygons, categorized or various methods. Let's, in this case, choose graduated. So we're going to vary the points by numbers. Let's choose those cases. So we have in value, we have cases here. We can click classify. And now it looks a little funny, but we have color that's classifying the number of cases. So the more cases, here's the really high cases, we have darker red colors. This might not be the best way to symbolize this. So in the symbology menu over here, let's change the method from color to size. Now, this is a better way for points to show quantities. We can use size of dots. And the bigger the size dot, the more total cases were in that area. So this is just another example of different ways we can use map symbology to show not only qualitative like before, but quantitative data as well. In this case, I'll put the points at the very top, so none of those boundaries or borders are overlapping them. And now you can play around with the symbology and change the colors just as you like. Great, just looking at the chat. Looks like we're pretty good. Yeah, many dots are on the sea. I'm not sure what's going on with all of those. Let's see. We can also, remember, select them, and we can open the attribute table, or I can use the identify features and see. So that is St. Helena. Some of these may, in fact, be small islands in that area. And a lot of times, point features, very few real things in the world are exactly taking place at only one little point. So many times, point features are kind of a generalized point for a bigger area. For example, we have this one little point here for all of Canada, or this small point for Brazil. But good point. And yeah, it is very important whenever you add a new data set to investigate it, see if there's any data cleaning that might be necessary. In a lot of these workshops, we give quite clean data, and that's not really how GIS work tends to be. There's a lot of cleaning and investigating, understanding the quality of the data and maybe how useful it might be and its scope.
Hey, Cam. I just wanted to make sure, because the chat is very active and we really appreciate everyone's participation. Did we answer the question about the spatial and subset index? The question is, in the layer settings, what is the difference between spatial and subset index?
Let's see. I guess I'm not sure what that question's referring to. Was that when we added the delimited text layer, or is that about projections or in the layer properties?
Adele, if you want to unmute, I welcome you to elaborate on that question.
Yeah, many thanks. The question was related to the CSV files while uploading. Okay. Yeah.
So if I go back to adding this, is it on this page?
Yes, on the delimited. Yeah, it's the layer setting below the geometry definition. There is a small arrow.
Okay.
Yes, this criteria.
I'm not quite sure. Sometimes for spatial index, I think there might be like a field in here that can provide information on what order, if they're overlapping features, what order they might go in. I'm not sure what watch file is. I won't pretend to know. I've never, to be honest, I've probably never opened this layer settings menu here. But that would be, I guess, was for spatial indexes. Sometimes there's a index to show like what order features should be drawn in, or if some things are overlapping, what would go on top of others within one particular layer. That's my best guess. For the Z and M fields, I think there was something in the chat as I'm trying to look through that on my phone. Z field is often for, so lat and long are surface level location, but Z field can be for height, like if something is not taking place on the surface of the Earth, but above or below the surface. M field, I'm not quite sure. Anybody, Carlos or anybody, feel free to chime in if you know that one. But I will say on this page, lat and long are one option that we can add. There's other spatial information we can add, like well-known text. It might just look like a very cryptic code in a CSV, but that is very readily mappable information. If you do have something like an address, we're not going to cover that in this workshop, but it's not quite so easy to add points just like this if you have addresses. That's this process called geocoding. And if they're street addresses, it can be a little bit of a trickier process than what we just did here. It's very possible, but that would be probably a separate workshop. So I'm not sure if I answered your questions there. I don't know what all those are, but happy to look in further later if it seems applicable.
Much appreciated, thanks.
And then
Thank you.
also at the beginning of our module, and I will link it right now, but there is a guide, QGIS resource guide, and so I will link that here in a second. But continuing on with questions, let's see here. Okay, great. The identity window piece was answered. And then in the future, yes, we will definitely look to teach about heat maps. So we're taking notes on all this stuff. Great. Okay, I think we're caught up on the, oh wait, hold on, there's one hand raised. I don't want to mispronounce your name, but Tia Kari, if you would like to unmute and ask your question.
Yeah, I agree. I think in the chat, please feel free to ask your question. I think we are at about a break time. Thanks for that suggestion. And I did see same person to suggest break time. As for heat maps, that is an option on here. I think these points aren't necessarily a good fit for heat maps. As you can see, as I click it right there. But that is something we can easily do.
Hello.
And hello.
Sorry, I have an issue. I couldn't, once I open the property under the attribute table, the table that comes out covers, I can't apply any command, anything I make. I don't know how to minimize it, to make it to be small, to see the apply button.
I see. So the attribute table right here, is it kind of floating around like this?
No, if I open properties, it's usually very large and it's difficult to apply anything I do.
Oh, I see. So not the attribute table. Let me put that back down here, but the layer properties. This one,
Yes.
like here.
Yes,
Oh, well,
exactly.
and this
The
one, are you able
apply
to just?
OK button, I can't see the apply or OK button anytime I want to like confirm that I've finished what I want to do. So it's difficult for me to apply anything I've done.
I see. So there's not a way you can scroll down and see these buttons down here.
Yes.
Is that what you mean?
Yes.
I guess my only suggestion, I have had some things like that happen if I'm plugging my computer into a different screen, or some of the window sizes can get mixed up. I guess if you're able to X out of that layer properties and open it again, hopefully that might help. If not, I'm not sure. We'll have to follow up. Maybe we can share screens at some point at the very end, and I can try and troubleshoot it. But I'm not sure why those buttons would be missing. But I knew sometimes.
It's not that they are missing. They are hidden. They are down
Hidden.
parts. I can't see them.
Okay. Yeah, I'm
Like
not quite sure.
Like sort of too big. It's like too big for the screen.
I see, like the window is too extended.
Yes, too extended. Yeah.
I'm not sure. That does seem frustrating though, so I'm sorry about that. I guess one suggestion, if you're using that window to change symbology, you can always open this panel on the side instead of that properties window here. And that way you don't have to have that second window open. So that little paintbrush icon right here.
Oh, okay. But what of this? I couldn't apply the EPSG because of that. So I don't know how to do that.
Okay. Well, I'd say that's
Right.
no worries. Whichever EPSG you have on your map right now, let's just stick with that. And you'll be able to do everything else in the workshop. So that one was just a very small kind of side note. Your map will be a slightly different shape, but that's okay. Whatever EPSG you're in, let's just stick with that.
Okay, it's all right. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
Yeah.
And otherwise, unless there's any other hands up or questions, maybe another short break, and we'll come back and we'll cruise through the last two modules of the workshop. So let's loop up back in about 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thanks, Cam.
So I hope you all had a good short break. We'll come back in about a minute, and I'll pull up on the tutorials where we are. We're going to start here at Module 4, if you're following along on that document. Hello, I see Mamadou.
Hello, everyone. I just wanted to suggest that for the colleagues who has a problem of symbology size, I think we can take them one by one. Maybe we can share the screen of one of them and see what is the problem and try to fix them together. I think it can also help the other colleagues behind to understand the process. Maybe they missed something. Over to you.
Okay. Yeah, great suggestion. Yeah, if it does sound like several people have the same thing happening. If one person is that has that issue of the properties box or the size, we can share the screen and try to address that before we move on. So I'm not sure. I don't want to volunteer any individuals, but if there is one person who has that specific issue,
There was Sami who said that have the same issue, and Kwang Kim. It was a break. I don't know if they are back.
okay. Well, if anybody's back that had that size issue, yeah, feel free. You can let us know in the chat if you're back, and if you want to share your screen, we can try and address that. It does sound like several people had the same thing. Otherwise, if not, maybe we'll move on and be happy to address it at the end. Hopefully, that doesn't prohibit you from doing the next steps.
Hello?
Hello?
Okay, is it my own issue about the property? Hello?
Hello. Yeah, I believe so, but I'm not sure. Maybe there's a few symbology issues at the same time.
Okay. All right.
But if you want to share your screen quickly, we can try and address it before we get going again.
I think mine is okay.
Okay, no problem. I see. So the one question here, I can share my screen back again about the circles are too large. Some people saying they're overlapping. Yeah, that's a great point. So a few things we can do is you can adjust the sizes. So I can make the circles, for example, just to be wild, way too large, or I can adjust them to be much smaller. Another thing, if sometimes some overlapping circles is okay, this would maybe be a little too much. Let's see. Let's say something like that. But we can also add transparency. Transparency is a really important thing in making maps so we can see things that are stacked on top of each other. If I go, if I, sorry, I couldn't quite get it, but did they say the question's already been addressed?
I think that was just someone unmuted. You can go ahead.
Okay. Okay. Cool. So yeah, transparency. If we go into the symbol here for our points, since they're overlapping, we can make them kind of see-through or transparent. I can change the color, the fill color of each point, and I can make it somewhat transparent. You can just watch this part. You don't have to follow along if you don't want. And now I can go back, and you can see, now we can see through those points. So they're not covering up everything underneath them. And this is just one example of transparency, but when I make maps, usually many layers, if there's many layers on the map, often some or all will have some transparency to them. So you can kind of see through. It looks nice, but also it can be important in just seeing all the data that's available. Hopefully that helps answer that question in the chat about the overlapping circles, or the circles are too large. And yeah, we can change symbol icons for sure. So for example, if I went back to single symbols, for these points, you can change these from simple markers to all sorts of different markers. We can have animated icons. We can have different shapes. You could find any picture. You can download any picture from the internet that you want, any shape or image, logo, for example, whatever, and you could fill those in to be different shapes. So we can just add one example of some different shapes. Here's some little triangles. And we could do those for graduated size as well. I know I'm going a little fast here, just for the sake of the rest of the material we're trying to cover, but I hope these are good examples of just some things you can do is a different size. This map kind of looks a little funny maybe, but just examples of some different shapes based on that question in the chat. Yeah, for transparency, so it's in the same place that you would change the color. So I can click on symbol here, and I can change the color of that. Here's all of my color options. And at the very bottom, it says opacity. So I guess opposite of transparency. And there's where I can adjust. So I could make it totally see-through, totally opaque, or somewhat transparent. And I'll just change these back to more typical shape. And there we go. Hopefully that helps with transparency. And yeah, there is ways to show both color and size. That would be a little bit more complicated. We won't go through it right now. But as you can see, in these menus, there's lots of menus we're not even touching or getting into. And also, next to many things, there is this little E for equations. So a lot of options that we choose here are kind of dynamic. They can be calculations based on fields. And that's one way that we could choose, for example, to have the graduated points by color. But then in the size of each symbol, I could do a calculation here to calculate, not only change the color, but also change the size of each symbol. So I know I didn't demonstrate that exactly just now, but that's an example of how we could do that. All GIS programs, ArcGIS Pro and QGIS, they're very thorough, and there's many ways to do the same things, and there are many options, yeah, to do very specific and diverse tasks. Okay, great. Anything else pressing before we keep moving along? We have about a little over an hour left dedicated to the workshop. And we have 2 modules, although I think we can kind of squeeze in the rest of the material we have. The last one, we might have to be quite brief on how to make the print layouts, but I do want to get there so that not only do we practice visualizing data and doing a little analysis, but then you know how to make a map image, a final product to show and communicate your analysis. I'm going to save my project. And the next thing we're going to do is a join. So there's many types of joins, but one thing we might often want to do is I'm going to turn back on my health boundaries. And if you remember in these attribute tables, we had a lot for the health boundaries. We had a lot of information here, right? We had tons of columns and many things. However, though, one thing we don't have is we don't have this case number data that we have in these points. So in these points, we have this column of number of cases, and those correspond to each of these areas on the map. So we have two tables, and for a join, one of the tables doesn't even have to be a mappable file like these points have become, but it could just be a spreadsheet that you have. But there's some kind of column like those ISO codes or the name of each place or some kind of ID number or something that can connect it, that can join it to a table of something that you have already mappable. If you're able to do that, the joins are often tricky. Many little small differences can make the join not be successful or not successful for all of the features. But joins are a way that we can add supplemental data to something that we already have. So we're going to add those case numbers of the points. We're going to attach these numbers of the cases onto these polygons. And then therefore, for each polygon, we'll have the number of cases. Hope that makes sense. So, and feel free to follow along in the tutorial materials as well. But to add a join, and I do suggest highly save your project before this. A join can sometimes cause the software to crash. We want to see which columns are in common between the two. And I think the best one for us to choose in this example is this ISO 3 column. This is like a unique 3-letter acronym for each state. We don't have to worry about spelling differences or something like that. And both of these tables have that common value. Great. So right click on our health boundaries, the areas, and go to properties. And this is, I know, the menu that some people were having trouble with. But we've been in this symbology menu, but let's go down about halfway to joins, this joins tab down here. And we have no joins currently, but let's hit that little green plus button and add a join. So we're adding a vector join. I'll make this a little bigger so we can see. Let's join this table of our health boundaries with our sample cases data. Great, it already added it by default for me. But here we have to change the join fields, and we'll choose the ISO 3 codes for each of these. We can then click OK and click OK on this next step. And hopefully, if all went well, and I'll repeat those steps one more time. If we scroll all the way to the right of our attribute table for our health boundaries, we have some new columns added. So we have these new columns all the way on the right of the attribute table. And we joined the case numbers from those points, which if you remember was originally from a spreadsheet. We joined those case numbers, as you can see right here in this column, to our health boundaries. And I'll go through those steps one more time. So to add a join, I right click and go to the properties for the layer I want to add information to. I can hit this little green plus button to add a join. That will open up this join menu. We want to join from the layer of the sample case data. And for both the join and target fields, these were the common columns that had common information. Let's choose that ISO 3 code fields. Now, I'd be surprised. We have a lot of people in this workshop. A lot of times, there are many times where you add a join like this and hit OK, and the software crashes. Joins are a little memory intensive. This is not a huge join, but still, I would guess that a few people probably experienced that as we did this one. So remember to save your project just before and after. So again, the input and target fields were both those ISO 3 codes. Now, since we have this new data added, let's change the symbology just for a moment of our health boundaries. However, I'll show you a great trick is we want to keep these WHO regions. That's going to be actually the map we're going to make at the very end. So let's duplicate this layer. Let's keep our WHO regions if you still have those. Let's right click on our health boundaries and say duplicate layer. So now we have 2 layers of our health boundaries. We still only have 1 file that they're pulling from, but we have 2 layers that we're seeing. So here's one health boundaries layer. Oops, sorry. Here's one, and here's another. They're the exact same. Let's keep one of them, and I can right click and rename the other to be health boundaries, and I'll call it cases. That way we can change the symbology for one, but we don't lose the other one. So again, I just right clicked and I said duplicate layer, and that will create a copy, a duplicate of any layer. So often if I'm working on a project, I have many duplicate layers. And it is important to rename and try and stay organized. It's very easy for your project to become disorganized and chaotic. Okay, so we're moving right along. Now let's open the symbology, the layer styling panel on the right for our cases data. If you need to open that again, that's that little paintbrush icon on the left there. And let's change this from categorized symbology to graduated. And let's change the value to that new one we added. There's kind of a long name because it's the join layer, but it should end in cases. Hopefully you're able to see that. To our country, sample case data, blah, 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 cases, ends in cases. And again, I have to hit classify here. And now this is a new type of map that we haven't made. This is a choropleth map showing by color the total number of cases. So we just joined data from one table, our points, these cases that were points, onto some polygons. So that's just an example. You can do joins in many different ways, but they usually also don't work quite so easily as this, where most states here successfully have some cases data. Often joins take a lot of data cleaning and formatting for them to work successfully or completely. This isn't a great type of map because we're showing totals of areas of very different populations and sizes, but it gives you an example of a way to show numbers with polygons, which we hadn't done yet. Okay. I don't see too many questions on that. That's joins. Yeah, and okay, two questions that came in. So one from Florence. So there are different data types, as you can see in the attribute table. Sometimes you might see numbers, but they're stored as text, for example. Other times numbers are stored as values. There's many data types, and it can make it difficult to do joins sometimes. For example, if there's a number for an area and it's like an ID number, it's like 006, while in the other table, it just has a number 6. There's no of those leading zeros. That join for those two will be unsuccessful. That's just a example that we covered today in the training here in Ankara. But yeah, joins often take some data cleaning, and there's a lot of scenarios that could play out. I do see another great question. So there's many different ways to symbolize data if we're looking at this choropleth map of colors. And this one is really important to talk about. I won't spend too much time. This could be a whole workshop unto itself. But the way that we decide where these colors change is very important. You can easily make a map that is deceitful or dishonest or shows kind of a misleading characterization of some data. And often maps, if people see some numbers or see a map, they believe it to be very true. But there's a lot of decisions we can make in how we symbolize data. So for example, you can change different modes of how you classify data. You don't have to do this part. You can just follow along watching this. But as I change these different modes to classify the data, you'll see that the map tells very different stories. Log interval, for example. Natural breaks is often a good choice. So there's these different ways that we can determine what values change the color. We can also add different numbers of classes. So we can make there be more shades of these colors. And we can change the color ramps themselves, of course. So there's not always one correct or incorrect way to what mode or how to symbolize your data, but it is very important to just point out that depending on the mode you choose, your map can tell a very different story, even though the numbers behind it might be the same. So it's important to know the data well and find a way that symbolizes it truthfully and effectively. I hope that answers that question in the chat. Great. Next, we're actually going to uncheck our joined layer. And let's go back to our health boundaries that are symbolized by region. So one more step we're going to do before we learn how to export data and make a map. So you can turn everything off. I'm going to leave on my disputed areas. I'll leave those on for the remainder of the workshop. I can turn off the underlying base map, and I'll just have these health boundaries right here. Okay, and thanks again for all the questions in the chat. And we are making great progress on this learning series workshop. Okay, so the next step we're going to do is run a geoprocessing tool. So there's this processing toolbox up at the top. If you click processing, you can open this toolbox. I have to move my Teams window out of the way. Here we go. And that will open this processing toolbox on the right side here. Now, this is like where the real power of GIS is there's tons of these tools. And we can not only do the things we've done so far is visualize data and join data together, but we can then analyze it even further. We can have multiple layers interact based on where they are in relation to each other. We can change their shape. We can do all sorts of different things, spatially changing and analyzing and having the data interact. We're going to run a very simple one today, and it's called Dissolve. So we're going to use this tool Dissolve to have QGIS look at all these features, which right now by color we've classified by WHO region, and we'll dissolve them, which means we're going to have all these many, for example, in this green Afro region here, we're going to have all those individual polygons merge into one polygon, just showing the whole Afro region without any state boundaries. So that's what this one example dissolve is, but You can see how many of these processing tools there are, and this is a really cool part of GIS and very powerful. Okay, so that's a reminder to save your project. Definitely save it every time before you run a tool. And let's search for this tool called Dissolve. So if you just type in to the processing toolbox, again, to open that, you can push that little blue gear icon on your toolbar or go up to processing and click toolbox. And if you search DISS, this tool called Dissolve should pop right up. You can double click and open that. And this field this tool is quite simple, pretty straightforward. We just have to choose our input layer. So let's choose our health boundaries. Health boundaries. And this next part is important. The dissolve fields. Let's open that and choose, let's see, WHO region. There it is. So remember, don't only click it to make the row turn blue, but you have to check the checkbox next to it. So when you go back out of that, you should see WHO region in gray in that box right there. We can leave this the same as create a temporary layer. I'll explain what that means in a moment. And we can hit run. Shouldn't take very long, maybe a few seconds. And I can close this window. It looks like it finished successfully. It took 3 seconds for me. And cool. All right. So now we have less features, but we have one area for each region. So I can select them, and you'll see now each region is just one polygon. There's many parts to the polygon, but it's just one area. And QGIS just basically merged together every feature in each region by looking at the attribute table, saying, okay, for this region, MRO, we'll just merge together all of those polygons. So that's just a simple example of one of the geoprocessing tools. And we'll use this result to make our simple map in the last remaining time of the workshop. Cool, so I'll go through those steps one more time for anybody that needs it. We started with our health boundaries over here. I opened the processing toolbox, click that little blue gear icon on your toolbar, or click processing and toolbox. In that toolbox, I searched for dissolve. So this is the dissolve tool. I opened that up. I made sure my health boundaries are my input layer. I hit this ... button and selected WHO region. I checked the box for WHO region as the field to dissolve by. And then I hit run. And that resulted in this.
Cam, I wonder if you can address a question about if there's any way to add live data feeds. And this is beyond the scope of today's training, but maybe you could make a comment about it. I did encourage the attendee to reach out to GIS support for the future on this, but the question is basically, is there any way or plugin to add live data layers for example, NOAA data or typhoon data or disaster data?
Yeah, there is. For example, let me just, I won't show you how to do this exactly. I don't know if we have time for that in this workshop, but let me just add one of my favorite layers here. I can add this. Here's the current horizon right now, just as a funny example. I'll turn on my WHO base map. And here's currently, right now, live, where the sun is directly over. Here's the horizon. and yeah, different shades of sunset. So here I'm in Turkey. Looks like nighttime is coming my way quite soon. Jing over there in Washington, D.C., it's must be late morning for her. So this is a live data feed, just as an example. Yeah, we can add any kind of live. These are from ArcGIS servers, but we can add live data for sure. So don't worry about adding this one yourself, just as an example to prove that yes, indeed, we can add live data that pulls straight from the internet. Hopefully that was a funny example. Okay, so jumping back to our dissolved layers, hopefully I answered that question. There's just one more step I want to do here, and that is, you'll notice in your resulting layer from the dissolve step that there's this little like microchip icon, or for years I thought it was like a little bug icon right here next to the results of our tool. So what that means, it's actually a little microchip. It means that this is a temporary layer. So it's just stored in temporary memory. If we quit our QGIS right now and reopened it later, it would disappear. So when we run a tool and we create a temporary layer, we often do that because we don't want to create too many files on our computer. But these results we like these results. We want to save them forever. So let's export this. So I'm going to right click and go to export and say save features as. Here you can see how many different many file types we can export features as: Esri shape files, geo packages, Esri file geodatabases, all sorts of stuff. For now, let's choose geo package. I think it'll be the easiest one for all of our computers to write, and it's the first one in the list. Now here, this is a common place that people will encounter an error. You can't just type your file name in here. You'll have to click this ... button and choose a place to save this data. I'll have to navigate over to my data folder, and we'll give it a name. So WHO regions, save. So you should see a whole file path right here before exporting. And we'll leave all the other options the same, and we can click OK. And now we just added yet another layer to our map, but you can see this one, it does not have that little microchip icon. It is a permanent file saved on our computer. So since that looks like it worked correct, I can even now remove, right click and say remove that dissolved layer that was the temporary one. Okay. And then last, before we go on to making a map, let's style these new dissolved regions the same way that we did with these admin boundaries. Let's have different colors for each region. And I'll show you an awesome trick that I really like in QGIS to do that. So since we already have this one layer that is the exact style we might want, we can just apply that style to these regions. So I'm going to right click on my health boundaries. I can go to styles, copy style, and all style categories. Then I can go to my WHO regions, the dissolved areas. Right click, go to styles, and paste style all style categories. I'll go through that one more time, but you can see now since they're looking at the same field, we can just apply that same style and have the exact same colors of the two layers. So I think that's really cool. So once again, I can apply styles from one layer to another, or if you maybe don't have that health boundaries layer still active, you can always just open the styling for your WHO dissolved layers and go to categorized. So you're categorizing these by region and choose WHO region as the field. If you hit classify, it should assign a random color to each WHO region. Cool. Looks like the chat is getting a little quiet, and I guess it is past 5 p.m. in Geneva, 6 p.m. here. Hopefully, some people are still with us. For those of you that are, thanks for sticking around in the final hour of the workshop. I know it's been a long one. Okay, Illich, you're still with us. Thank you. Awesome. Okay, so our last thing is we're going to make a map, this exact map right here of WHO regions. I thought that would be a very simple but pertinent map to make, no matter where you're located. And one thing, we actually kind of missed this step earlier, but let's add some labels to these. So not only by color, but we can add some text labels on top of each region. To do that, we can actually stay in this styling panel right here. And underneath symbology, I can click labels. See that? Underneath the paintbrush icon, there's that little yellow tag that says ABC. And I have my WHO regions, that layer selected over here. So any changes I make on the right, that'll affect that layer. And let's add some single labels to these. I don't want to choose ADM0 name. I think that's just a random or maybe the first alphabetical name in each region. So that's not very accurate, but what we can do is then select for these labels WHO region. Cool, so now we have a text label for each region denoting which region it is. That'll make our map much better. Some of them are a little hard to read, like MRO, so we can also customize and format these labels. WHO likes to use the font Source Sans Pro. If you have that on your computer, you might not. Feel free to choose a different one. We can adjust the size here. We can also add one very useful thing that many labels have, which is a buffer. That's this third tab over on the labels. So if we add a little text buffer, a little white halo around each letter, it'll make that much easier to read. And I'll just save my project while we're doing it. Great, nice to see the chat that people are still with us. Awesome, thank you. Okay, cool. So now we added some labels. I won't get into all these options here, but labels can get very complicated and elaborate. Often placing labels exactly where we want them is the tedious final task of any cartography project. For today, let's just leave them at their default location, but know that you can customize labels quite extensively, especially some maps that you might see if there's a lot of data, like I think of a street map of a city. there might be thousands of text labels on there for different features, roads, places, water bodies, all sorts of stuff. Labels are a very important part of many maps, but for today, let's just stick with these pretty simple ones. Okay, so our final thing is, well, let's save our projects. And if you want to make any final touches, changing colors or anything, feel free to do so. But we're gonna now create a map layout. So this is now mod 5, our final module. I guess we already did the very beginning part of module 5 to export that layer. So check. We're even on, let's see, I think we're on exercise 2 of module 5. So only a few pages left. And we're going to create a print layout. It's going to open a new QGIS window. And that will be kind of our canvas, like our blank piece of paper where we can create a map. So to do so, remember, save your project first before we do this. Click the project menu on that top menu bar and go to new print layout. So again, project on the top menu bar, new print layout. It's going to ask to name this layout. Let's name it something like WHO regions and hit OK. And now we have this new window. So I can flip back and forth here. It'll be a little hard to juggle all these windows while also watching the team's video. But we have our main QGIS window, and we also have this print layout window that we're going to add and make our map out of. If you're on a Windows computer, you can hit Alt-Tab at the same time, Alt and then Tab, and it can jump back and forth between windows. I think on a Mac, it might be the Apple button or Command-Tab, something like that. Or actually, it might be Command and then the one above Tab, the tilde button, I believe, to jump back and forth between two windows in the same program. That can be a useful one as we jump back and forth here quite a bit. Okay, so we're going to add this map. I just have my WHO disputed areas on top and my WHO regions on the bottom. I turned off every other, unchecked every other layer. I think our map can be pretty simple. So I'm going to go over to my print layout window. And on the left, that left toolbar, there's a whole bunch of buttons. One of them says Add Map. I'm going to click that. It's the fifth one down. It looks like a little piece of paper, white piece of paper scroll, kind of. Add Map. And that will allow me to just click and drag. I'm going to click and drag and draw a big box around my whole piece of paper. Cool. So now our map popped up on there. It looks like a little too zoomed out, maybe. I can now adjust it and fine tune it. This part can be a little tedious. Sorry for the background noise here. So to fine tune where my map is, I can click on it to highlight it. And then I can hit this button, the fourth from the top on that left toolbar, move item content. So now I can move the map around. I can even zoom in or out. Sometimes this part can be a little tricky. To fine tune that, you can also adjust this number, the scale right here, to really get it exactly where you want it. But take a moment, try and get your map exactly where you'd like it. But this part can be a little hard. I see a question that some people usually take a screenshot and paste the map from the main QGIS window, not do a print layout. That's totally fine, but I think you'll see that a print layout, we can do a lot more than might meet the eye. or then we can even do on the main QGIS window. So I'm going to adjust my scale here a little bit. Ooh, I have to go the other way. Okay, I'll call that good. This part can be a little tricky in placing it. And is there a question?
No, just maybe what could be a small trick is that using the scrolling wheel in the mouse and control at the same time, you have more like a fine zoom that you
Wow, great trick.
That you can use to adjust that because with the scrolling wheel, every jump is very big, but with that at least is finer.
Thank you, Carlos. I didn't know that trick. That is awesome.
Good.
And again, to be able to move your map, you have to have it selected. So there's those little white boxes in every corner. And you turn on this move item content mode. So those little, that button on the left with the 4 blue arrows. When I turn on that mode, then I can adjust zoom in and move my map around. And including holding down control and scrolling. That's a great tip Carlos just offered. That's going to save me a lot of time in the future. Okay, next, you can see over on the right side. Now it's similar to our main map where we'll have several layers here. Right now we just have our map. Once you get your map exactly where you want it, I suggest you can click this little lock button, and now we can't even select our map. We can't move it. It's kind of locked in place. You can always adjust it later, but sometimes everything's exactly where you want it, and then all of a sudden you zoom way in and on your map, and things get goofed up. So that's just one suggestion, but try and get your map. It doesn't have to be perfect for this workshop, but somewhere where you can just see the whole world and it's not way too zoomed out or zoomed in. Okay, I'll hit save here. And now for the final steps, we can add some other features. So these are things that you can't quite do in the main QGIS window, but I guess some people said that they might do in PowerPoint or other graphic design software. That's a great method if you know Photoshop or Adobe Illustrator or PowerPoint or something like that. You can always use those tools too to put some final touches on your map. But in QGIS, you can also use this print layout to do a lot of graphic design, advanced graphic design stuff as well. So something we might want to do is add like a title, right? So let's add an item. It's up at the top of our print layout menu, and we can go to add label. So let's add some text. I think just based on where I placed my map, I can add mine to the bottom here. Feel free to add it anywhere you want. You don't have to copy this map identically. And when I add that, there's some example text, and I can add WHO regions. Okay, it looks a little small, so I can now click on the different elements on our map layout. And for my WHO regions, the properties will pop up on this right side, and I can fine tune them. So we can change the font. I need to make it quite a bit bigger. And I'll place that right in the middle. Cool, this is not the most beautiful map we've ever seen, but I think it should do for this workshop. I bet many of your maps are looking nicer than mine. Yeah, and I see a question in the chat about labels. Can we show country cases and things like that? Definitely. You can show any fields that are in the attribute table. You can even, with labels, show multiple things and format them, do calculations. Labels can get quite elaborate, for sure. Oh yeah, and one other thing, just based on the data and the projection we have, I know it's a little awkward that the easternmost portion of Russia, there's a few areas here that are in the west. That's just kind of the data, how it's set up. Of course, that land here is connected to Eastern Russia here. So I know that's not ideal. On our WHO maps, we try and not have that situation. But it does show that putting a round globe on a flat piece of paper can have some odd artifacts. But good catch to the person who put that in the chat. There are ways we could fix that. I think for now, for this workshop, we'll have to leave it as is. Hope that's okay. Cool, and then we can add other items here in that add item menu. So you can add a scale bar, north arrow. You could add more text, maybe add your name, the date, all sorts of things. How about I'll add a north arrow just for fun. Although often on a world map, you don't quite need a north arrow. It's usually a familiar shape for people, but just for demonstration. We could add a legend if we wanted to. This map probably doesn't need a legend, but we could add one. And sometimes adding a legend can be a little tricky. Right now, I just added all the layers that we have in our project. We certainly don't want that. So I can go over here in the legend properties and change them. I can uncheck this box auto update. So again, I added a legend with add item, add legend. I just click and drew a box where I wanted the legend to be. Turns out this legend is huge, but I can remove a lot of these layers we don't need by clicking them and clicking this little red minus sign until we just have the ones we want. We might not even need these extra bottom ones. So here we go. And I can always customize the legend. I can click in here, I think, and customize this text. Again, this map probably doesn't need a legend. It's pretty self-explanatory, but let's add one. Looks kind of cool. Okay, to be legally compliant, we should add a little box here for the gray areas that says not applicable. I can, let's see if that might pop up in our disputed areas. Let's see. No, I don't think it will. That might take some customization. I don't know if we'll be able to cover it in the remaining minutes that we have. I do want to save some time for questions, but just want to point out that, yeah, even if we add our WHO vector tile base maps like this has, it is grayed out in these disputed areas. There might still be some legal compliance issues. So we do encourage you to reach out to the GIS Center if you're making some maps, especially for external use or publication, and we can help you maybe just add a few little tiny changes to your map and help make them be legally compliant. Cool. So the very final step that we'll do, and then want to open it up for questions that people might have in our last 25 minutes here, is to export this map. So to do that, once you have everything good to go, I do encourage you to take some time to make your map look nice, but let's just do one test export, and if you're continuing working, you can always export again later. You can click on layout up at the top of your print layout. One thing before, I should say, if you do want to change anything on your map, you can go back to the QGIS window, the main window here. If I change the colors, for example, why don't I do that? I'll just shuffle random colors. Now, if I go to my print layout, I can hit refresh, and those items will refresh, including the legend here. So everything is dynamic. They're all plugged into each other. And changes you make, maybe you want to change the label size, change the symbology or whatever, add a different base map. Those things will change dynamically on your print layout once you refresh it. So that's pretty cool. And it often takes quite a bit of time to put these layouts together and get everything looking just right on your maps, especially if there's a lot of data. Okay, so back to the task at hand. Our final thing, let's just export this map. I can click layout on the top toolbar of my print layout window. Let's export it as an image. We can choose a JPEG. I think that'll be a good generic file type to export this map. We can call it WHO regions. And I'll hit save. I'll go through these steps one more time as well. Here, there's some options of the image type and image quality. I can just hit save here. It might take a moment, and then I get a message popping up that my map has been exported. And here we have a final image of our map, our exported map in JPEG form. So pretty cool. Often your map might look a little different once it's exported than it did on the original screen. So then you can check it out, go back, make a few edits, a few changes, and export it again. I suggest, here's just a little joke, and I suggest never putting final as the name. If I wanted to go back to layout, export as image, I could say WHO regions, this is my final map. Anytime you say final, there's going to end up being final number 2, final number 3, final number 9 of that version of the map. So I just suggest just don't use final, because usually it will not be the final one. So there we go, just another example exporting the map. And it now is exported in the folder. We can add other things. So I do in the data folder have a WHO logo. We could add images on top of this. We could add other text boxes and graphics. We can even add, graphs or other data visualizations from other software. It's a pretty dynamic interface and situation. Otherwise, I think that's kind of it for our curriculum. So let me know if you need any of those steps repeated. Otherwise, we can open it up for questions.
We have a couple of questions in the chat, Cam. So I know, and I think some of these were addressed, but maybe we can just emphasize them about like ways to change the canvas size when exporting.
For sure. Okay, great question. Yeah, I just used the default one, but if you right click on your page, you can go to page properties, and that will open this menu on the right. And here you can change the page size, the orientation. You can even just specify exactly how you want it. So if you wanted this map to be really large, or specific sizes, that's where you can do that. Good point. I meant to mention that. We just used the default one. Luckily, the world map fit nicely in our landscape A4 page size.
Perfect. Another one, if you actually can keep the screen open and sharing, that might be helpful to contextualize this. But there was a question about whether it's possible to keep the Russian Far East together with the rest of the country. So if you see on the left side, like there's a little squiggle next to Alaska. That's the Russian Far East. Basically, is there a way to keep that connected with the other part of Russia?
Yeah, we covered that and just talked about how yeah, that's this data. It is kind of a thing that on most WHO maps we produce, we don't have that relic of this projection, but unfortunately that is how the data is for this workshop. So yeah, this map isn't ready for publication for sure, but it is just a good point to remember that there's weird stuff happens when we make maps because we're trying to stretch and compress a round globe onto a flat surface. So things like that, just because the meridian, like where the projection ends, it does cut off that farthest eastern part of Russia. There are some places you can draw where basically the edge of your map, the edge of the world on both sides, especially in the Atlantic where it doesn't cut through as much land. But there's very few places where it won't cut through anything. But yeah, many maps we can even artificially move that over to kind of maintain political consistency. But yeah, so that's a great point, and I'm glad we circled back to it and discussed it again.
Great. Yeah, just going down the chat. Is it possible to show the country name and data as label, for example? Is it possible to show country name and number of cases on the same map?
Definitely. Like I said, the labels are dynamic. You can have the one label show many fields or even calculated fields. So yeah, we can, with anything that exists in the attribute table, you can very easily add that as labels or even multiple sets of labels. So for sure.
Yeah, and that's kind of before this print phase that you're able to do that too. Another question, isn't the disputed layer shouldn't that be in the legend?
Yes, great point. And yeah, I was going to mention that to make this map better, I would add a little one more gray square here and say not applicable. That should definitely be in our legend. So I can work on that. I can do a little shortcut here to do that as we're talking, and I can do that as we answer the next question as well.
You can watch Can Be a Wizard. Real time.
One thing to note, just while I'm doing this, is QGIS doesn't have a great spell check, at least that I'm aware of. So it is worth being quite careful with spelling things. I've almost I won't say it because this is being recorded. I've almost made a very embarrassing mistake in a previous job with lack of spell check, and yeah, it's something to be aware of anytime you're just free typing labels or titles or anything onto your maps. There's not a great spell check feature, at least not yet.
That's a good point. One day the goal will be for everyone to be able to click around as quickly as Cam does in QGIS.
Okay. A little bit better for our disputed areas. I think the color is maybe a little too dark, but I think we get the picture. That was kind of a shortcut way. So this is just a rectangle on the map. This is not dynamic. If I change the colors of those disputed areas, it wouldn't change automatically like the other areas would, but hopefully that's an example of, yeah, we can add little fine-tuning details to our map.
Okay, thanks. It looks like the question, how to make background color of legend transparent. Carlos is able to answer that, and maybe Cam can show it. But if you go to in legend properties, just uncheck the background option, and that's how you do that thing. So yeah.
Yeah, so for each element now in our map, you can see all the elements here. It's there's quite a bit. As you select each thing, all the options will pop up for that. So if we click on our legend here, or we can click it on the map, you can scroll down and there's lots of options. Yeah, including, as Jing said, there's the background. We can uncheck that and there'll be no background. So in that case, yeah, maybe I'll move this somewhere where it's not blocking those islands.
Okay. Then next question, how can one download GeoPackage for national and subnational boundaries? Is there any specific site?
Yeah, so great question. Actually, the best place to do it would probably be our GIS hub, the GIS Center's hub site. You can download the WHO approved administrative boundaries there, level 0, 1, 2. And that's probably the best place to start. There's other external resources for sure, but maps produced within WHO try to use the same boundaries. There might be sometimes with opening it in QGIS some geometry issues. We're working on that, and hopefully that'll be remedied soon. But yeah, that's the best place to start, I would say, is our hub site.
Yeah, definitely tons of resources on the hub site, and 100% encourage all of you guys. Cam is navigating towards it now. But for a lot of the mapping, whether it's data or it's software, or even being able to watch this recording later, a lot of these resources are on the QGIS website. So certainly maybe bookmark that as a resource for you and yourself in the future. Cam is showing us underneath geodata how you can look at some of the boundaries there. Yeah. Ta-da! Nice.
Yeah, so you can navigate to here, and that's where you can download our boundaries.
Cool. All right. Next question. How did you remove layers in the legend?
Oh, okay. So yeah, when we first added the legend, there was like tons of layers, all the ones in the map. I'm clicking on my legend here, so we can see the properties here on the right. If I uncheck this box that says auto update, I can then click on layers and hit this red minus sign and delete the ones that I don't want. So you can go through, click on the ones for probably our cases, those points, or the base maps, and then hit this little red minus sign, and they will go away. If anybody else has better ways to do that, we love suggestions.
Next question, thank you, Cam, is sometimes one may do something routinely, for instance, generating weekly reports. Is there a way the map can auto refresh to current data without going the whole step every time?
Sorry, could you say that one more time, Jing?
Basically, they're asking, if they do a routine update, like offering weekly reports, is there a way that they can auto refresh the current data using the same map without going through every single step every time they want to? Yeah.
So I guess I can think of a couple suggestions for that. And one is you can save project templates, and then you can open templates. So for example, I have our map request template right here, that if I want to make a map for one of our GIS Center map requests in QGIS, I can open this template, and it will already have the WHO logo and our title banner. It'll have all the font. Everything will be all preset, ready to go, which is really nice. That would save tons of time, especially because we make a pretty significant volume of maps. So that's one. You can also save other things, like maybe I really like this specific style that I've just made, and I want to apply that. I don't want to have to recreate these colors. I can, let's see, I think I have to open this. I can save this style. It creates a style file. Funny, it rhymes. So I can create a file that is like a very small document that you can apply to other layers and or other projects, or you can even send to somebody, and that can be sure that your like styles across different maps are very consistent. So that's 2 suggestions. I hope that helps and answers the question. Let's see, I do see one from Florence. Can we export map as ESP file for better resolution? I'm not sure about what that file type is. Let's see if that's one of the options. Tons of options here in file types. I don't see ESP. We can also export it as a SVG or a PDF. So those are both, well, PDF usually, these are both vector file types. So like an SVG or a vector PDF are good for Photoshop or Adobe Illustrator. But you can see there are many file types, and when you do click export, no matter what it is, so like I can do a PNG, for example, you can increase the drops per inch here. So if we wanted this to be like super high resolution, we could bump that up. And also, of course, like we talked about your page properties, if you make your page size larger, that's making the image itself larger, like more pixels. So hopefully that answers that question.
A few more questions. Plugins installation requires local certificates. How can I proceed?
Yeah, I'm not really sure how to handle that. That might be a restriction on that computer that's being used. Like if you're not an administrator and it's a work computer, I know that's a common problem we have in our in-person GIS trainings. Even this week in the one I'm helping with, we needed some administrators to come in to enter passwords so we could install some software. So that can be tricky. I think you'd have to get, if it's a work computer, I think you'd have to get a IT administrator to allow you to install plugins and other software.
Another question is, are there any guidelines for selecting colors that can enhance the visual appeal of a map?
Yeah, definitely. So as I mentioned before, we do have a style guide. I forget how to get there exactly from our hub, but I believe it's on our linked to on our hub somewhere.
I also linked it in this chat again, and I will. And
Okay.
I can, yeah, offer it to
Cool.
people.
And I know some people had problems accessing that, but I think you can actually find it on like the WHO website if you Google style guide. That is just some of the branded colors. There's other websites to give you, there's many websites out there to give suggestions on color palettes. Yeah, this map doesn't look great. These are just random colors. But there are ways to get color palettes that tend to be look good together for different situations, whether it's like a ramp, like you're showing a number gradient, or you're just showing colors for differences like we are here. There's many resources out there, and there is that WHO style guide that's specific to on-brand colors.
I think those are the questions that I saw in the chat. I do encourage individuals, like, the chat was pretty ongoing and streaming, and then we answered some questions live during the actual recording itself. So if you didn't have a question answered, I welcome you to raise your hand, and then we can unmute you and you can ask your question. Otherwise, there's also our alias. Oh, here's another question. Do we have any ArcGIS Pro training coming up in the future? Actually, yes. Our ArcGIS Pro training is coming in September. So look forward to that, and we'll send out, as usual, our usual blasts for when that is happening. You can anticipate that the second or third week of September, basically. So yes, there's that. But otherwise, I do encourage everyone, if you have further questions, to reach out to GIS support at who.int. And oh, look, someone shared their map. Wow, it's beautiful. Good job.
Nice. Thank you
Well
for
done,
sharing.
well done. Yeah, so very proud. So thanks everyone for joining, and we look forward to your participation in the next session. We do ask before you hop out real quick, if you're able to fill out the post-training survey, that would be really excellent. That helps us curate our future trainings and then make adjustments to the ones that we're currently doing. As noted, we were taking notes during the chat or during the session, so we'll be making some updates as well to the Hub website. Again, encouraging you all to use the Hub website as your premier resource for all things coming out of the GIS Center. So thanks again, everyone, for joining, and many thanks to Cam.
Thanks, everybody.
For teaching. That was super excellent. So, and our facilitators, can't sleep on our wonderful facilitators, Carlos and Joe and Denise and Inga and Roland were all in the background ready to support. So we hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you at the next session.
Thanks all.
everyone.
Good. Thank you all.
I'm gonna stop the recording.